Chapter 1, You're going to do IVF with her? Julian Croft, what do you take me for? My sharp voice echoed through the empty apartment. He didn't speak, just furrowed his brow in annoyance, slammed the door, and left me alone to face the wreckage of our home. At that moment, our wedding was just 2 weeks away. I am Eleanor Vance, a woman about to be a bride. Or rather, a woman who was once about to be a bride. I loved Julian Croft with a love that was both humble and fierce. In college, he was cold and brilliant, like a star in the sky, while I was just an unremarkable Cinderella. I chased after him with everything I had, doing his laundry, cooking his meals, giving up my own dreams for him. Finally, after he graduated, we got together. I thought my romantic fairy tale was finally coming true, but reality slapped me hard across the face. Julian's beloved mentor, Professor Albright, was gravely ill. His only daughter was childless, and to repay the professor's kindness, Julian had actually agreed to have a child with her through IVF. I couldn't accept it, let alone understand it. I felt like a joke he could play with and discard without a second thought. With trembling hands, I picked up my phone and posted a status update. Wedding in 2 weeks, looking to replace the groom. Any takers? The comments section quickly lit up. Most of my friends thought I was kidding and teased me accordingly. Only I knew how much my heart was aching. I curled up on the sofa, staring blankly at the flashing neon lights outside. I once thought I had the whole world. Now I realized all I was holding was empty air. My phone suddenly rang. It was an unknown number. I hesitated for a moment before answering. Eleanor Vance, that post about replacing the groom, were you serious? The deep, familiar voice made me freeze instantly. Hey, Ethan Sterling? I could hardly believe my ears. I hadn't heard that voice in so long. He was my childhood friend. We grew up together until college graduation, when he went abroad for his studies and I got together with Julian. We had lost touch ever since. It's me. His reply was short, his tone unreadable. So, are you replacing the groom? I took a deep breath, trying to suppress the storm of emotions raging inside me. Yes. The line was silent for a few seconds, then I heard his voice, tinged with a hint of amusement. Julian Croft must be blind. Since you ask so sincerely, I guess I'll reluctantly accept. What? Was he joking? I was stunned, momentarily unsure how to react. I'll have someone send you the prenuptial agreement tomorrow. Make sure you sign it. His voice pulled me back to reality. Also, change my contact name to Hubby. Hubby. I repeated the word unconsciously, finding the whole situation utterly absurd. Coming from his lips, it sounded like a prank. When had he become so? Forward. The boy I remembered was so cool and quiet. What, you don't want to? There was a flicker of uncertainty in his voice. Having second thoughts, I bit my lip, a mix of emotions churning within me. Second thoughts? Why should I have second thoughts? After how Julian had treated me, what loyalty did I owe him? No, it's just. Just what? He pressed. Before I could answer, he added, Eleanor Vance, I'm not here to play house with you. It's just, it hasn't sunk in yet. I cut him off, taking a deep breath and forcing myself to calm down. Fine, I'll sign the prenup. With that, I opened my contacts and changed his name to Hubby. Staring at the word, I felt an indescribable sensation. It was like a release and also a new beginning. He seemed to sense my action, a barely perceptible hint of a smile entering his voice. Good, he said, and one more thing. After we're married, I expect a normal marital life. Chapter 2, I froze for a second, my voice laced with confusion. What do you mean? Exactly what it sounds like. His tone was calm, as if he were discussing the most ordinary thing in the world. I need a real wife, not a placeholder. My heart skipped a beat, a chill running up my spine. I paused, struggling to get the words out. I thought this was just a marriage of convenience. His breathing deepened, his voice dropping another notch. A contract marriage is still a marriage. I need a wife and you need a husband, don't you? I fell silent. His words were like a sharp knife, piercing my heart. I did need a husband. A husband who could help me escape Julian, escape the past, and start over. But this wasn't how I wanted it to be. I opened my mouth, but I didn't know what to say. He seemed to sense my hesitation, and his tone softened slightly. I know what you're worried about. He paused, then continued, I won't force you to do anything you don't want to do. But I hope you understand that marriage isn't a game. His words brought me a sliver of reassurance. Maybe marrying him wasn't such a terrible choice. At least he was more honest and respectful than Julian. I understand. The other end of the line was silent for a moment. After a long pause, he spoke again, his voice returning to its earlier cool and calm tone. Good, I'll arrange the wedding. Without waiting for a reply, he hung up. I sat on the sofa, staring at the black screen of my phone, my mind a whirlwind of emotions. It was done. I had no other choice. I immediately started calling our mutual friends, retracting the invitations one by one. Ellie, are you serious? You and Julian are really canceling the wedding? My best friend Audrey's voice was filled with disbelief. Yes, I said, my tone firm and resolute. But why? Weren't things fine just a while ago? It's a long story. I didn't want to explain. The wedding is off and I have a new groom. A new groom? Who? Audrey was even more shocked. Ethan Sterling. There was a moment of silence on the other end, followed by a piercing shriek. Ethan Sterling? Ellie, you're not kidding, are you? Ethan Sterling is the city's most eligible bachelor, the man of countless women's dreams. How did you? Long story short, help me get the invitations back and tell everyone my new groom is Ethan Sterling. I interrupted her barrage of questions. The next few days were a blur of handling the wedding's aftermath. Julian had vanished as if he'd never existed. To my surprise, I felt nothing. Before, if he came home late or didn't contact me for a few days, I would be sick with worry, constantly calling and texting. Now, I didn't even have the slightest urge to ask where he was. Had I really moved on from him? One day, just as I was about to leave the apartment, the doorbell rang. Chapter 3, Through the Peephole, I saw a face that was both familiar and strange. Julian, I opened the door. Julian stood there looking haggard, with dark circles under his eyes, a scruffy beard, and wrinkled clothes that looked like they hadn't been changed in days. He was a shadow of his former dashing self. Ellie, his voice was hoarse, tinged with a plea. Can I come in and talk? I stepped aside to let him in, walked straight to the sofa, and sat down, watching him with cold eyes. What is it now? He stood before me awkwardly, wringing his hands like a child who had done something wrong. My mentor, Professor Albright, passed away. I have to observe a 6-month mourning period for him, so you're canceling the wedding? I cut him off, my voice so calm it surprised him. He froze, seemingly not expecting me to take the news so placidly. He must have thought I would make a scene, crying and screaming questions at him like before. But now, my calmness terrified him. Why? Yes, he stammered. I'm sorry, Ellie. I know I've wronged you, but Professor Albright discovered me. He gave me my start. I have to honor him. I looked at him and suddenly found it all rather amusing. I stood up, walked over to him, my voice icy. Julian, you're a profound disappointment. He hung his head, unable to meet my gaze. I'm sorry. Don't say another word. I picked up the wedding invitation from the table and tossed it in front of him. This was yours. Now you can have it back. He picked up the invitation, his hands trembling as if he were caressing a precious treasure. Ellie, you're really not angry at all. I looked at him, my eyes devoid of any emotion. Angry? Why should I be angry? I let out a small laugh. Julian, who do you think you are? Are you worth my anger? His face turned pale, his lips trembled, but he couldn't form a single word. Julian, I looked at him, my tone frigid, we're over. He opened his mouth, as if wanting to say more, but I had no desire to listen. Just as I turned to walk toward the bedroom, his voice came from behind me. Ellie, his voice was low, pleading. Could you come with me to Professor Albright's memorial service? Professor Albright gave me my start. Julian's voice was very low, as if it came from deep within his chest. I have to be there. I looked at him, an indescribable feeling in my heart. Professor Albright was a highly respected academic, with students all over the world. It was he who had the discerning eye to give the unknown Julian Croft a chance. Even though I was utterly disappointed in Julian now, I couldn't refuse to attend the memorial for such an elder. Fine, I finally agreed, turning to pull a black coat from the closet, grabbed my purse, and followed Julian out the door. The memorial was held at Professor Albright's home. It wasn't large, but it was packed with people. Students, colleagues, friends, and even some strangers had come to pay their last respects. The air was thick with the faint scent of sandalwood, mixed with low sobs, creating an oppressive atmosphere. Melody Albright was dressed in black, her face pale, supported by her mother as they mechanically thanked the mourners. She looked utterly exhausted, her eyes red and swollen as if she had been crying for days. Seeing this scene, my heart was a mix of emotions. Once, I had sincerely hoped for Professor Albright's blessing, hoped he would be a witness to my marriage. As I was lost in thought, Julian gently tugged on my sleeve. "Come on, let's go offer incense for the professor." He took my hand and led me through the crowd to the front of Professor Albright's portrait. I lit 3 sticks of incense, bowed deeply 3 times, and said a few words silently in my heart. Just as I was about to turn and leave, a commotion erupted at the entrance to the hall. I instinctively looked back and saw a familiar figure appear in the doorway. "Julian," a weak voice called out. Chapter 4. When Melody Albright saw Julian, she was like a drowning person clutching a piece of driftwood. She abruptly let go of her mother's hand and stumbled towards him. "Julian," she cried out, her voice hoarse and thick with emotion. I watched as she was about to fall, and Julian instinctively reached out, catching her in his arms, gently patting her back and murmuring words of comfort. I stood frozen, watching this scene, my heart a jumble of emotions. Once I had relied on him just like that, craving his embrace and his comfort. But now, the person in his arms was no longer me. "Ellie, why don't you go sit over there for a bit?" Julian's voice reached my ears, tinged with a hint of apology. I nodded and silently turned away, walking back to Professor Albright's portrait and bowing deeply once more. The professor's kind face seemed to be right before my eyes. He had once encouraged me, had high hopes for me. Now he was gone and everything had changed. I was overcome with emotion. I looked up and scanned the room. It was still crowded, a symphony of hushed sobs and quiet conversations creating a mournful tune. Feeling suffocated, I walked to a window, pushed it open, and took a deep breath. The cold wind on my face helped clear my head a little. I saw Mrs. Albright sitting alone in a corner, her figure hunched, looking exceptionally lonely. She was clutching a handkerchief, dabbing at the corners of her eyes. A wave of indescribable sympathy washed over me. I knew the pain of losing a loved one. I walked over and stood beside her. "Mrs. Albright, my condolences," I said softly. She looked up, her bloodshot eyes staring at me, seeming a bit dazed. Then, her gaze focused, and she grabbed my hand, squeezing it tightly as if it were a lifeline. "You're Julian's fiancé, aren't you?" My throat felt constricted, and I couldn't make a sound. I wanted to explain that I was no longer Julian's fiancé, but the words wouldn't come out. Mrs. Albright's hand was cold, her knuckles white as she gripped mine. "Julian is such a good boy, so full of sentiment and loyalty. He's been running around nonstop, handling everything for Melody's father. He even plans to observe a 6-month mourning period and not go anywhere. Ellie, he's a good boy, you mustn't blame him." Mrs. Albright rambled on, her voice filled with relief and gratitude. I remained silent. I know that girl Melody relies on Julian a bit too much, but to him, she's just like a sister, nothing more. You know, we spoiled Melody rotten growing up. And now, with her father gone, she can't cope and is bound to do some drastic things. Julian has a kind heart and doesn't want to hurt her any more than she's already hurting. You mustn't take it to heart. Mrs. Albright paused, then added, "The one Julian truly loves in his heart is you." I looked up at Mrs. Albright, my eyes filled with disbelief. Mrs. Albright patted my hand affectionately and smiled, a cunning glint in her eyes. "That boy. He doesn't say it, but he holds you more precious than anything." One time, I brought him some soup and overheard him talking to Melody. Melody wanted him to go abroad with her for a while, but he refused, saying he had to stay with you. He even said that you were more sensible than Melody, gentler than Melody, more. A wave of dizziness washed over me, and I had to grab the windowsill to keep myself steady. Mrs. Albright's voice trailed off. She suddenly released my hand, her face growing tense. "Ellie, what's wrong? You look so pale." Chapter 5. Mrs. Albright's words struck me like a sledgehammer. Julian praised me like that in front of the Albrights. And yet he ignored my objections and insisted on having a child with Melody Albright? It was utterly laughable. I'm fine, Mrs. Albright." I took a deep breath, struggling to steady myself. "It's probably just the stuffy air in here. I'm going outside for a bit." Mrs. Albright looked at me with concern. "All right, go get some fresh air. Don't let yourself get overwhelmed." I fled the memorial hall and stepped into the courtyard, greedily gulping in the fresh air. The winter sun shone on my skin, but I felt no warmth at all. My mind was a chaotic mess. Mrs. Albright's words replayed in my ears like a broken record. All of Julian's past kindness, all his promises, flashed before my eyes. "Ellie," Mrs. Albright's voice came from behind me. I turned to see her walking toward me with a cup of hot tea. "It's cold out here. Drink this to warm up," she said with concern, handing me the cup. I took the cup and thanked her. Mrs. Albright sighed. "Julian's father passed away when he was young, so he's always been mature and made his own decisions. His agreeing to have a child with Melody was only because he was afraid she'd do something foolish in her unstable emotional state. That girl, we spoiled her rotten growing up, and I'm at my wit's end." Mrs. Albright paused, reaching out to gently pat my shoulder. "Ellie, I know this is hard for you, but Julian's hands are tied. He's a good boy. Don't blame him." Blame him? We were over. What right did I have to blame him? Perhaps our relationship had been a mistake from the very beginning. I put down the teacup and took a deep breath. "Mrs. Albright, I have to go." I turned and walked away without looking back. The sky was overcast, looking like it was about to snow. I stood aimlessly by the side of the road, with nowhere to go. The cold wind howled, whipping up fallen leaves that danced in the air like black butterflies. The sun set, and the last vestiges of twilight faded from the horizon. The temperature dropped, and I shivered uncontrollably. I took out my phone to call a cab, only to realize I was in a remote area with no cars available. Dejectedly, I sat on a roadside bench, staring at the "no drivers available" message on my screen and sighed deeply. "Looks like." I rubbed my frozen hands together, muttering to myself, I'll have to walk back." Professor Albright's villa was on a mountainside on the outskirts of the city. I walked down the winding mountain road, my heart feeling hollow. Suddenly, dark clouds gathered and fat raindrops began to fall. I cursed under my breath. When it rains, it pours. With no umbrella and nowhere to take shelter, I had no choice but to press on. The rain grew heavier, turning the mountain path into a muddy mess. I nearly slipped several times. The icy rainwater soaked through my clothes, chilling me to the bone. I couldn't help but shiver. Finally, after walking for nearly an hour, I saw the faint glimmer of lights at the foot of the mountain. I quickened my pace, practically jogging down the rest of the way. "Driver, to the city center." After finally flagging down a taxi, I gave the address and endured a bumpy ride back to my apartment. Soaked to the bone and feeling lightheaded, I was practically tossed out of the car by the driver. After paying the fare, I staggered into the apartment building, breathing a small sigh of relief as I pressed the elevator button. Leaning against the elevator wall, I felt like a puddle of mush. If I didn't lean on something, I felt like I could collapse at any moment. Once inside my apartment, the first thing I did was take a hot shower, trying to drive out the chill. The hot water cascaded over me, but it couldn't warm my frozen heart. After drying my hair, I found the first aid kit, swallowed 2 fever reducers, and collapsed onto the bed, falling into a deep, troubled sleep. I slept fitfully, constantly waking from nightmares. One moment, I was trapped in a downpour with nowhere to run. The next, I saw Julian's car speeding away, leaving me standing alone on the side of the road. Each time I woke, my head throbbed, and my body ached as if I'd been run over by a truck. In a daze, I repeatedly fumbled for the water glass on my nightstand, managed to take a sip, and then fell back into a restless sleep. I don't know how much time passed before I was jolted awake from another nightmare. The sky outside was beginning to lighten. I struggled to sit up, feeling slightly better, but my head was still foggy. I threw back the covers to get out of bed when I suddenly heard a faint sound. Chapter 6 click. I whipped my head around to look at the door. Julian was standing there, holding my water glass as if he had just refilled it for me. When he saw I was awake, a flicker of awkwardness crossed his face. "You're awake." He walked to the bedside and handed me the glass. "How are you feeling?" I took the glass but didn't drink, just stared at him quietly. His face was etched with fatigue, a layer of dark stubble on his chin, and his eyes were ringed with black. It was obvious he hadn't slept well. "Pack your things and get out of my house." My voice was hoarse, but carried an unyielding force as I stared at him with icy eyes. He avoided my gaze, turned to the closet, pulled out a suitcase, and began packing his clothes in silence. My heart felt like it was being squeezed by an invisible hand, making it hard to breathe. I bit my lip, suppressing every emotion rising within me. He suddenly stopped what he was doing, turned to face me, and after a moment of silence, said in a low voice, "I'm sorry, Ellie. Professor Albright only had one daughter. Melody, she really needs me right now." With that, he zipped up the suitcase and walked out of the apartment without a backward glance. The moment the door closed, I felt something inside me shatter completely. I put down the water glass, sank back onto the bed, and tears streamed silently down my face. A few days later, my fever finally broke. Dragging my weakened body, I went to my office and submitted my resignation. "Eleanor, are you sure you want to resign? Won't you reconsider?" my supervisor asked, looking at me with surprise. "There's nothing to reconsider." My voice was firm. "I've already made up my mind." "But you've always been an excellent employee. Why the sudden resignation?" my supervisor asked, confused. "I'm moving back home," I replied flatly. My supervisor tried to persuade me further, but I didn't want to explain anymore. With my termination letter in hand, I went to the HR department to complete the paperwork. The HR representative looked at me with a mixture of confusion and surprise in her eyes. But she said nothing, just quietly processed my departure. Stepping out of the office building, I took a deep breath, feeling a sense of relief I hadn't felt in a long time. I hailed a taxi and gave the address of my apartment. Leaning back against the seat, I closed my eyes and sighed. I had already found a new job in Riverton, and now, this apartment at Vista Ridge, the love nest Julian and I once shared, needed to be completely cleared out. When I got home and opened the door, I saw Julian sitting on the living room sofa, reading a book, his expression calm. He looked up and saw me holding a large cardboard box, his brow furrowing slightly. "What are you?" My heart skipped a beat, then I retorted, "What are you doing here?" Julian put down his book, stood up, and his gaze lingered on the box in my hands for a few seconds before turning to me, his eyes questioning. I ignored his look and said coldly, "We broke up. I could call the police right now and report you for trespassing, you know that?" Julian looked at me, not answering my question, just pursing his lips awkwardly. "Get out or I'm calling the cops." I had no desire to deal with him. I shot him a glare and carried the box into the bedroom. I slammed the door shut with a bang, shutting Julian out. I tossed the box on the floor and started sorting through its contents. Our wedding portrait was still hanging on the bedroom wall, its presence a glaring mockery. I walked over, ripped it from the wall, and threw it into the trash without a second thought. Along with it went all the gifts Julian had ever given me. I tossed them all in without batting an eye. After clearing everything out, I felt a weight lift from my chest. Finished with my packing, I habitually reached for my phone, only to find it wasn't there. I then remembered I'd left it in the living room when I came in. Just then, a familiar ringtone echoed from the living room. It was my phone. Considering Julian was out there, I hesitated, but ultimately decided to go get it. What if it was an important call? I had just reached the door, about to open it, when it was suddenly pushed open from the outside. Julian stood in the doorway, holding my phone. The screen brightly displayed 2 words, "Hubby." His face was dark, his eyes cold as ice. His lips parted slightly. "Eleanor Vance, you'd better explain to me who this hubby is." Chapter 7, my heart leaped, and then a surge of anger washed over me. I scoffed and snatched the phone back. "Explain what? What does that have to do with you?" Julian grabbed my wrist. "Eleanor, don't play dumb, you know what I'm asking. He's hubby, then what am I?" I wrenched my hand free. "Julian, are you kidding me? You're the one who wanted to have a baby with someone else. You're the one who canceled our wedding. You're the one who's mourning for Melody Albright's father for 6 months after all that. You have the nerve to question me." Julian froze, seemingly taken aback by my outburst. He took a deep breath, his tone softening slightly. "Ellie, I can explain about Melody and we can talk about the baby. But enough." I refused to listen to his disingenuous excuses. "Julian, it's over between us. You can have a baby with whoever you want. It has nothing to do with me." I turned to leave, but Julian grabbed me again. "Eleanor, are you really going to be this cruel?" His voice was low, with a barely perceptible tremble. I let out a cold laugh and mercilessly shook off his hand. "Cruel? Who's the cruel one here? Julian, you betrayed our relationship first, now I'm leaving. Be gone before I get back." I stalked toward the door without a backward glance, unwilling to get entangled with him any longer. Just as I reached the door, my phone rang again. The caller ID was, of course, hubby. Before I could answer, a hand shot out from behind me and snatched the phone away. I kicked out, grabbed my phone back, and quickly stepped out onto the balcony, taking a deep breath before answering the call. "Hello, sweetheart." Ethan Sterling's voice carried a hint of exhaustion. "I was in meetings all day. I'm a little tired and just wanted to hear your voice." He chuckled lightly, his tone returning to its usual gentleness. "Have you thought about the prenuptial agreement?" A warmth spread through my chest. Ethan was always like this. No matter how busy he was, he always made time for me. Compared to Julian's aggressive interrogations, Ethan's gentle consideration made me feel secure. "I'm still out. I'll talk to you about it when I get back." I glanced at Julian, who was standing in the living room with a thunderous expression, and a wave of annoyance washed over me. "Ethan," I hesitated for a moment. "Why would you give me half of your net worth?" Before I could finish, Julian rushed over and snatched my phone. "Ethan Sterling, stop your little games. Alina is my fiancé." I grabbed the phone back. "Julian, we are over. You have no right to control me." I spoke into the phone to Ethan. "Ethan, book me a flight back to Riverton as soon as possible." Ethan's deep voice came through the line. "Okay." After hanging up, I took a deep breath and returned to the living room. Julian's face was so dark it looked like it could drip ink. "You're going back to Riverton to marry Ethan Sterling?" Chapter 8. His voice was low and hoarse, with a barely perceptible tremor. I nodded without hesitation, crisp and clean. Julian's pupils contracted sharply. His lips moved as if he wanted to say something, but in the end, his hand just fell limply to his side. Suddenly, Julian's weary voice came from behind me. "Ellie, we've been together for so many years. Hate me, resent me, whatever. If you want to go back to Riverton, I won't stop you. Let's just have one last meal together as a final goodbye." A goodbye to this toxic relationship that should have ended long ago. That was certainly something worth celebrating. But the sight of his face honestly disgusted me. I glanced up at Julian and rubbed my temples. "There's no need. You should go." Julian seemed to want to say more, biting his lip as he was about to speak, but I had already turned and gone back to my bedroom. Before closing the door, I said coolly, "Close the door on your way out." Lying on my bed, I opened my phone and habitually scrolled through my social feed. Melody Albright had posted a new photo, an intimate shot of her and Julian with the caption, "Happiness." I scoffed, liked the post without a second thought, and then blocked her from my feed. Just then, I received a text message. It was from Ethan, telling me the flight was booked for 8 o'clock tonight. I replied with a simple, "Okay," and started packing. Halfway through, I remembered a few books Julian had given me that were still in the study. I went to the study, opened the bookshelf, and took them out one by one. One of them was a photo album Julian had made by hand, documenting every moment from when we first met to when we fell in love. I flipped it open, looking at the once sweet photos, a sour feeling rising in my chest. I closed the album and sealed it in a cardboard box with the other books, as if I were sealing away the entire relationship. After finishing my packing, I grabbed my suitcase, walked to the door, took a deep breath, and slowly closed the apartment door behind me. "To the airport, please." The taxi driver glanced at me in the rearview mirror. "Going on a trip, miss?" I gave a faint smile. "Yes, to a new place." 3 hours later, the plane landed smoothly at Riverton International Airport. As I walked out of the arrivals gate, a biting wind carrying a fine mist hit my face, but it couldn't dispel the gloom in my heart. Suddenly, a splash of white caught my eye. A tall, handsome man in a white overcoat was holding a bouquet of pale purple eustomas, standing out in the crowd. It was Ethan Sterling. He gave me a slight smile, his eyes sparkling as if they held crushed starlight, dazzling and bright. "Alina Vance, long time no see." His deep voice was remarkably clear amidst the airport noise. I was in a bit of a daze. The boy I remembered who always wore his school uniform so neatly had become the serious Mr. Sterling, the lawyer. And right now, the look in his eyes as he gazed at me was so gentle. He handed me the bouquet of pale purple eustomas. The petals were still dotted with glistening dewdrops, just like the light in his eyes. "You still remember I like eustomas?" I asked, a little surprised. "I remember everything about you." His tone was firm, his gaze deep. He took my suitcase and slowed his pace to walk beside me. His tall, imposing figure enveloped me, bringing an unexpected sense of security. I turned my face away, feeling my cheeks grow warm. His words were too direct, too captivating. Chapter 9. Sitting in his understated yet luxurious black Bentley, the car filled with a faint scent of sandalwood that perfectly complemented his refined aura. I couldn't help but marvel. He truly was Riverton's most sought-after young talent. This presence, this style, impressive. As the car drove smoothly toward the city, I hesitated for a moment before finally asking, "Ethan, why did you respond to my request?" I paused, finding it hard to say. "Do you know how absurd this whole thing is?" A meaningful smile played on his lips. "Eleanor Vance, are you questioning my decision?" His gaze made me feel a little guilty, and I looked away. "I just think you deserve better." He reached out and gently tucked a stray strand of my hair behind my ear. The warmth of his fingertips sent a jolt through my entire body. He met my eyes, his own seeming to hold 1,000 stars. "You're worth everything to me." The car was silent, only the sound of our breathing audible. I summoned my courage, met his gaze, and asked softly, "Ethan, did you used to have feelings for me?" He chuckled lightly. "What do you think?" I suddenly remembered back in school, he had always quietly watched over me, helped me with all sorts of problems. Even at my lowest, he was the first one to appear by my side. And I had always just seen him as a big brother from next door. Now, he was telling me he had feelings for me. I took a deep breath, trying to calm my racing heart. So, the love I had always longed for had been right beside me all along, and I had never noticed. "Ethan." I looked at him, my eyes filled with a mix of curiosity and anticipation. "SHH, he placed his index finger on my lips, stopping me. "Don't say anything." I stared at him, my heart pounding like a drum, feeling as if I could barely breathe. His voice was low and sincere. "Ellie, I admit, I always acted like a brother around you because I was scared. I was scared my feelings would frighten you, scared you would reject me, so I could only watch over you in silence." He paused, his tone becoming serious. "But now, I don't want to hide my feelings anymore. I want you to know that I like you a lot." His confession exploded in my mind like a thunderclap. I stared at him, dumbfounded, unsure how to react. He liked me. This boy I grew up with, this brother figure, had been in love with me all this time. A warmth flooded my heart, but it was tinged with a hint of unease. Seeing my silence, he thought I was hesitating and gently took my hand. "You don't have to answer me right away." He dropped me off at the new apartment I had rented in Riverton, bidding me farewell with a gentle look. "Get some rest. Good night." He turned to leave, but on impulse, I grabbed his hand. My voice was shy as I said, "Do you want to come up for a drink?" Ethan froze, stunned by my sudden invitation. My face began to burn, and I bit my lip in embarrassment. "Never mind if you don't want to." But he suddenly swept me up into his arms and strode toward the elevator, his voice low and strained. "Too late for regrets." His strong body was warm and solid. In his arms, I could feel his heartbeat. Chapter 10. The clean scent from his neck drifted to me with his movements, rushing straight from my nose to my heart. My arms, wrapped around his neck, tightened instinctively. Feeling my movement, Ethan let out a soft grunt, but his steps only quickened. A night of passion. The next morning, I woke up with an aching back, but Ethan was gone. He seemed to have already left. I quickly got ready and headed to work. Just as I reached the company elevators, I saw Ethan standing there as well. He was wearing a deep blue suit today, looking exceptionally sharp and handsome. When he saw me, the corners of his mouth lifted into a gentle smile. "Morning," he said softly. "Morning," I replied. The memory of last night's passion made my heart beat faster. What was he doing here? Were our companies in the same building? The elevator doors slowly closed, leaving just the two of us in the small space. The atmosphere became quiet, so much so that I could hear my own breathing. I stole a glance at him and found him looking at me too. Our eyes met, and I felt my cheeks flush. He suddenly reached out and gently brushed a stray hair from my ear, his voice so soft it could melt stone. "You must have been tired out yesterday." My heart skipped a beat. Ding, the elevator doors opened. He held the open button, gesturing for me to exit first. The moment the doors cracked open, I bolted out, practically running to my office. Behind me, I heard Ethan's low chuckle, a sound laced with affection, a hint of teasing, and something else. something that made my heart race. I was distracted all morning. Ethan's confession was like a stone dropped into the calm lake of my heart, sending ripples through it. I replayed every word he said, every look he gave, trying to find a flaw, a hint of a joke, but there was none. His eyes were so serious, his tone so firm that I couldn't doubt his sincerity. During my lunch break, I received a text from Ethan. "Come down, I'm waiting for you." I hesitated for a moment but got up and went downstairs anyway. He was leaning against his car, holding a bouquet of fiery red roses that gleamed in the sunlight. When he saw me, his lips curved into a warm smile. "For you," he handed me the roses, his gaze so gentle it could melt anything. I took the flowers, and their faint, sweet fragrance filled the air, refreshing my spirit. "What do you want for lunch?" he asked. I shook my head. To be honest, I had no appetite at all right now. "I'll take you somewhere." He gave me a mysterious smile, opening the car door for me. The car drove on, finally stopping in front of a villa. "This is..." I looked at him, confused. "My new house. We'll live here together from now on." His tone was casual, but his words hit me like a bombshell. I was stunned, momentarily speechless. He saw my surprise and explained with a smile, "I know this is sudden, but I want to give you a home. A home that belongs to just the two of us." He took my hand, his gaze firm and gentle. "Ellie, I think I need to propose to you properly." He knelt on one knee, looking at me tenderly, his voice even more resolute. "Alina Vance, marry me." My heart began to pound again, as if it would burst from my chest. I looked at him, my lips moved, but no sound came out. I couldn't answer him easily. The sincerity in his words was different from our earlier banter, forcing me to re-evaluate this relationship. Seeing my hesitation, he stood up and pulled me into his arms, gently kissing my forehead. "It's okay. I'll wait for you until the day you're ready." Chapter 11, in the evening, Ethan was waiting downstairs to pick me up from work again. Seeing me leave the office building, Ethan honked the horn twice. I smiled, walked over, and got into the car. He looked at me gently and started the engine. Where to next? I hadn't visited my grandpa since returning to Riverton, and I really missed him. I scratched my head and said, "Could you take me to the old house? I want to see my grandpa. I haven't seen him since I got back." Ethan glanced at me, then turned the car around and headed toward my grandpa's house. He parked the car at the entrance of the old family home, his expression calm and gentle. "I won't intrude on your reunion with your grandpa," he said, reaching out to ruffle my hair. "Good night, my little Ellie." I watched his retreating back, a sweet feeling blooming in my heart. The courtyard of the old house was quiet, with only a few dim yellow lamps casting a faint glow. The familiar scent of osmanthus filled the air, a sweet and cool fragrance that I had known my whole life. I walked along the bluestone path, my steps almost silent, but my heart was a tumultuous river. The closer to home, the more timid one feels. The phrase suddenly popped into my head. I had been away for so many years and had barely returned. Now, stepping onto this land again, my heart was filled with a mix of emotions. "Who's there? What are you sneaking around for?" A sharp shout shattered the night's tranquility, making me jump. I looked toward the sound and saw my grandpa, Samuel Vance, holding a wooden stick and striding angrily toward me. In the dim light, his figure looked particularly tall. "Grandpa, it's me," I quickly called out, afraid the stick in his hand might come down on me. Hearing my voice, Grandpa stopped abruptly, the stick frozen in midair. He squinted, trying to get a good look at me in the dim light, as if he couldn't believe his eyes. "Ellie, is that really you?" His tone was full of doubt and a touch of disbelief. "It's me, Grandpa." I confirmed again, a lump forming in my throat. After all these years away, Grandpa seemed to have aged a lot. His back was more stooped, and the wrinkles on his face were deeper. Grandpa stood stunned for a few seconds, and the stick fell to the ground with a clatter. He hurried over, grabbed my hand, and his cloudy eyes glistened with tears. "Child, you're finally back," his voice trembled with a hint of a sob. My nose tingled, and I almost burst into tears. I squeezed his hand back, my voice choked with emotion. "Grandpa, I'm back." He held my hand, looking me up and down with concern in his eyes. "You've lost weight and gotten darker," he said with a pained expression. "All these years, you've suffered out there on your own." "No, Grandpa, I've been doing fine," I quickly reassured him, not wanting him to worry. "It's good you're back, it's good you're back." Grandpa kept repeating this phrase, a smile he couldn't hide spreading across his face. He led me into the house, chattering on about family matters as we walked. I listened quietly, soaking in the long-lost feeling of family, my heart filled with warmth. Grandpa looked at me kindly, but there was a warmth hidden in his cloudy eyes. "Ellie, didn't you say before that you were getting married? How come? You came back alone?" He paused, his gaze falling on my empty ring finger. The diamond ring Julian had given me once sat there, but now it was bare, just like my heart. I took a deep breath and forced a smile. "Grandpa, that wedding? I canceled it." As I said those words, my heart felt a sharp prick of pain. After all, it was the wedding I had longed for, what I thought was my happiness. Canceled. Grandpa was surprised, then he sighed. "What happened? Weren't things going well?" Chapter 12, I shook my head, not wanting to bring up Julian and the IVF issue, and simply explained we weren't compatible. I gently squeezed Grandpa's hand, giving him a reassuring look. "Grandpa, don't worry, I'm doing great now. In a couple of days, Ethan is bringing his parents over to formally discuss our plans with you." "Ethan, discuss your plans." Grandpa was stunned, seemingly not having processed it yet. He frowned in thought for a moment, and his expression gradually shifted from confusion to delight. "Ha ha 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 ha!" Grandpa suddenly burst out laughing, his laughter filled with relief and joy. Good, wonderful, that's wonderful. I've watched that boy Ethan grow up. He's a good person, capable, and a perfect match for you." Seeing Grandpa so happy, I felt a weight lift from my own shoulders. Ethan's appearance was like a beam of light that had illuminated my once gloomy world. "Well then, I'll be waiting for you all in a couple of days." Grandpa couldn't stop grinning as he spoke, gently patting my hand. 2 days later, Ethan's parents, Robert and Catherine Sterling, arrived as planned. The moment Mrs. Sterling saw me, she took my hands, her face beaming with a kind smile. "Ellie, you're such a good child from now on. You're our daughter-in-law. We'll take good care of you." With that, she took out a list of dowry items from her purse, printed on A4 paper, the dense text making my head spin. Mr. Sterling added from the side, "This is just a small token of our appreciation. It's nothing much." I was a bit taken aback. The dowry was incredibly generous. Ethan walked up to me, looking at me with deep affection. "Ellie, I know you still have some reservations, so I've revised the prenuptial agreement again." He handed me a document. I opened it and saw that almost all the clauses were in my favor, leaving him with little to gain. "And this?" He took out another document. "This is a list of my personal assets. I'm willing to give you half." I looked up and met his sincere gaze, a warmth spreading through my heart. "Ellie," he said, gently taking my hand, "marry me. I will spend my life loving and protecting you." Before I could answer, Grandpa suddenly spoke up. "Ethan, we've all seen how you feel about Ellie. You two grew up together and are in love now, so let's pick a good day and get you registered as soon as possible." I looked at Grandpa in surprise. He was smiling warmly at Ethan and me. Ethan was also momentarily stunned, then he looked at me, his eyes shining with anticipation. My face flushed slightly, and I gave a small nod. A joyful smile immediately spread across Ethan's face, and he squeezed my hand tightly. Grandpa laughed heartily and picked up his phone to check the calendar. "How about next Tuesday? It's an auspicious day for a wedding." A perfect day, and just like that, it was settled so quickly that I barely had time to process it. On Tuesday, Ethan and I, holding our household registration books, took our marriage registration photos at the city hall. The bright red marriage certificate felt heavy in my hand, as if it held all my future happiness. Leaving the city hall, Ethan eagerly pulled me into a photo with our certificates and posted it online. The caption was simple and clear, "My wife." Soon, my social media exploded. Old friends and colleagues flooded the comments with congratulations. Among them, the most surprising comment was from Julian, wishing you happiness. I silently closed my phone, not wanting to deal with irrelevant people and things anymore. Over the next few months, Ethan took care of almost all the wedding arrangements. From the wedding photography to the venue decoration, he handled everything personally, down to the smallest detail. I only needed to offer my ideas occasionally, and he would listen attentively and incorporate them. On the day I tried on my wedding dress, I put on the pure white gown and looked at myself in the mirror, feeling like I was in a fairy tale. Ethan stood behind me, his eyes filled with tenderness and love. "You're beautiful." I turned to him, a smile naturally forming on my lips. 3 days before the wedding, we were busy setting up the venue. Ethan was bustling about, directing the staff, while I helped with some of the smaller decorations. We occasionally bickered over small things, but we would quickly make up. "Ethan, you put the flowers in the wrong place, they should be over there." All right, whatever my lady says goes." He ruffled my hair affectionately. On the wedding day, as the makeup artist was doing my makeup, my phone suddenly rang. I glanced at the caller ID. It was an unknown number. I ignored it and let the makeup artist continue. The phone rang again, the same number. Slightly annoyed, I answered the call. "Hello, Ellie, it's me." Chapter 13, a familiar voice came through the phone and my heart sank. "Julian?" My hand tightened around the phone. I hadn't heard that name in a long time. "Ellie, long time no see." His voice was still gentle, tinged with a faint sadness. "I know you're getting married now, but I just wanted to tell you I've always loved you." I was stunned, momentarily at a loss for words. "I'm sorry, Julian." I took a deep breath. "I'm married now. It's really over between us." "I know," his voice cracked slightly. "I just wanted to tell you how I feel, that's all. I wish you happiness." Before he could finish, I decisively hung up. I had no desire to revisit that part of my life. The makeup artist's skilled hands danced across my face, applying foundation, eyeshadow, and lipstick, layer by layer, until I was transformed into the perfect bride. "Miss Vance, your skin is amazing, not a single flaw," she exclaimed. I smiled at my reflection. I did look beautiful today. Ethan had appeared behind me at some point. He leaned in and gently placed a kiss on my lips. "My bride is so beautiful." I blushed and gave him a playful glare. Tusk, he shook his head with mock exaggeration. "We're not even married yet and you're already glaring at me. What's going to happen later?" I raised my hand as if to hit him. "Ethan Sterling, are you asking for it?" He grabbed my hand, feigning pain. Ouch, that hurts, Mercy, my dear wife, Mercy." While crying out in mock pain, he pulled me into his arms. "And look at you, still calling me by my full name. Not very gentle at all." The makeup artist watched us, unable to hold back a laugh. "Mr. Sterling and Miss Vance are so in love." With that, she tactfully left the dressing room, leaving us alone. "It's all your fault, you're never serious." I gently tapped his chest, a sweet smile on my face. He held me tightly, resting his chin on the top of my head. "I was just trying to lighten the mood. You were so nervous earlier." We joked around a little longer, until it was almost time for the ceremony. Ethan reluctantly let me go. "All right, my bride, it's time for your grand entrance." He looked at me with deep affection, his eyes full of love. He turned and left the dressing room. I watched his back, a smile playing on my lips. "Ellie, are you ready? It's time to walk down the aisle." Grandpa's voice came from outside the door. I took a deep breath, trying to calm the storm in my heart, and walked to the door. "Let's go, Grandpa." I linked my arm with his, a radiant smile on my face. The light from the crystal chandeliers poured down, illuminating the red-carpeted aisle. The guests' blessings washed over us like a tide. With my arm linked through Grandpa's, I walked step by step toward the end of the aisle. There, Ethan was waiting, a gentle smile on his face, as if all the beauty in the world was gathered in his eyes. "Grandpa, don't cry, you'll ruin my makeup." I gently patted his hand. His eyes were brimming with tears, and he was as emotional as a child. "Good girl, Grandpa is just so happy to see you finally find your happiness," Grandpa said, his voice choked with emotion as he held my hand tightly. I smiled, my own eyes welling up. When we reached Ethan, Grandpa solemnly placed my hand in his. "Ethan, I'm giving Ellie to you. You must treat her well." "Grandpa, don't worry. I will love and protect her with my life." Ethan's voice was firm and gentle, his gaze locked on my face as if he wanted to merge me into his very soul. With the officiant leading us, we recited our vows. "Mr. Ethan Sterling, do you take Miss Alina Vance to be your wife? To have and to hold, for richer or for poorer, in sickness and in health, to love and to cherish until death do you part?" "I do." Ethan's voice was strong and clear, filled with unwavering conviction. "Miss Alina Vance, do you take Mr. Ethan Sterling to be your husband? To have and to hold, for richer or for poorer, in sickness and in health, to love and to cherish until death do you part?" "I do." My voice was soft but just as firm. We exchanged rings, symbolizing our commitment and eternal love. Then, Ethan gently lifted my veil and kissed me deeply. The hall erupted in thunderous applause and cheers. I closed my eyes, savoring Ethan's tenderness. In that moment, I felt like I had the whole world. During the reception, as I walked from table to table on Ethan's arm, a wave of nausea suddenly hit me. I pushed Ethan away and rushed to the restroom, where I was violently sick. Ethan followed me in, worriedly patting my back. "Are you feeling any better?" I shook my head weakly, my face frighteningly pale. Without another word, he scooped me up into his arms and dashed out of the hotel. To the nearest hospital. Chapter 14, Ethan instructed the driver, his voice tight with anxiety. All the way there, my stomach was in knots, and I felt so sick I could have passed out. Ethan held me tightly, the warmth of his palm seeping through my thin dress, offering a small measure of comfort. At the hospital, I was taken straight to the emergency room. After a thorough examination, the doctor asked quizzically, "Have you noticed anything unusual lately?" I shook my head. Other than the recent vomiting, I hadn't felt any other discomfort. "When was your last period?" the doctor asked. I froze for a moment, trying to recall. Ethan frowned as well, but a flicker of joy appeared in his eyes. "I think it's about 2 weeks late," I said, a little uncertain. The doctor gave me a meaningful look. "Let's run a blood test for HCG." The wait for the results was excruciatingly long. Ethan and I sat in silence, the air thick with tension. Finally, a nurse walked over with the lab report. "Congratulations, Mr. Sterling. Mrs. Sterling is 4 weeks pregnant." Pregnant? 4 weeks. My mind went completely blank with a loud buzz. Ethan was stunned too. He took the report, checking it over and over again, his eyes filled with disbelief. I cupped his face and gave him a gentle kiss on the lips. "Ethan, we're going to be a mom and dad." He snapped out of his daze and hugged me tightly, his voice trembling. "Ellie?" Ethan's voice was choked with emotion. He held me so tightly it felt like he was trying to merge me into his body. "We're going to be parents." I smiled, but my eyes were wet with tears. I gently touched my still flat stomach, where the fruit of our love, a tiny new life, was growing. The feeling was miraculous and sacred. I felt like I was glowing from within. "Yes," I said, standing on my tiptoes to whisper in his ear. "Ethan, thank you. Thank you for giving me a home, thank you for making me a mother." He released me, cupped my face in his hands, and gazed deeply into my eyes, his own filled with an overwhelming tenderness and joy. "Silly girl, what are you saying? This is our baby." He bent down and reverently kissed my forehead, then my lips, a long and gentle kiss. When we left the hospital, the sun was warm on our skin. I took a deep breath, and even the air felt fresh and sweet. Everything was so perfect, like a fairy tale ending. Ethan held my hand tightly, as if afraid I might suddenly disappear. He looked down at me, an irrepressible smile on his face. "What do you want to eat? You're the boss today." I thought for a moment. "Let's go for steamed buns. I haven't had them in ages." He smiled and ruffled my hair. "Okay, whatever you want." Just as we were about to get in the car, my phone buzzed. It was a message from my best friend. I opened it, and my face instantly fell. "Ethan." My voice trembled, and my grip on his arm tightened unconsciously. He noticed my strange behavior and looked down at my phone screen. After just one glance, his expression turned grave. "How could?" he muttered to himself, his voice so low it was almost inaudible. I clutched my phone tightly, my knuckles turning white. On the screen, my friend's message was stark. "I have some news for you. Something happened." To Julian and Melody. Chapter 15, my best friend's call came right after. Her fragmented account, mixed with a noisy background, finally allowed me to piece together the whole story. It turned out that when Melody Albright learned we were getting married today, she threw a tantrum and insisted on having her own wedding before ours, one that was bigger and more extravagant. After much drama, she finally got Julian to agree to marry her. But who could have imagined that the wedding would turn into a farce, ending in tragedy? During the ring exchange, Melody suddenly burst into hysterical laughter, pointed at Julian, and called him a hypocrite, screaming that he was still in love with me. The guests were in an uproar, and Julian's face turned ashen. She even shrieked at the crowd, "Eleanor Vance, do you see this? This is the man you once loved so deeply, and now he's mine." My hand holding the phone trembled slightly. I had long since wanted to leave these old matters behind, and I truly thought Melody was mentally unstable. What was even more shocking was that Julian was crazier than her. In front of all the guests and both families, He actually admitted it with red-rimmed eyes. He roared at Melody. Yes, I regret it. I regret not cherishing Ellie when I had the chance. And I regret choosing you. You're a lunatic, a complete and utter lunatic. His words were like adding fuel to the fire. Melody completely broke down. She grabbed a nearby champagne glass and hurled it at Julian. It shattered on impact, and blood began to stream down his forehead. In the chaos, someone called the police, and someone else called an ambulance. My friend told me that Melody's emotional outburst caused her to have a miscarriage, which led to severe hemorrhaging. The doctor said she might never be able to have children again. As for Julian, a shard of glass had slashed his carotid artery. Although he was rushed to the hospital and his life wasn't in danger, his health had taken a severe blow. I stood there in a daze, a buzzing in my ears, as if trapped in a nightmare. Ethan gently put his arm around my shoulders. His warmth seeped through my clothes, offering a small comfort. Ellie, don't think about it. Let's go. I nodded mechanically. What happened to Julian and Melody was perhaps a case of getting what they deserved. I was grateful that I had chosen Ethan in the end. He gave me a warm home and a complete love. Now, the sun was shining warmly on us. I slipped my hand into his coat pocket, lacing my fingers with his. Let's go to the Good Fortune Pavilion. Their steamed buns are the best. He smiled and held me closer. Okay, whatever you want. Then, he led me to the car, and we drove toward the Good Fortune Pavilion. In that moment, I felt incredibly happy and content. The steamed buns at the Good Fortune Pavilion lived up to their reputation: thin skin, generous filling, and savory broth. I took a bite, and the rich flavor of meat and scallions instantly filled my mouth. Ethan smiled and asked, "Is it good?" I nodded in satisfaction, about to praise it when I caught sight of a familiar couple walking through the door. Chapter 16, Julian Croft and Melody Albright. My smile froze on my face, and my chopsticks halted in midair. The world seemed to stop in that instant, leaving only the sound of my own frantic heartbeat. What were they doing here? The Good Fortune Pavilion was famous, but this was Riverton, a good distance from the city they lived in. And besides, weren't they both? Julian seemed to have seen us too. He froze, a complicated expression on his face. Melody was clinging to his arm, a sweet smile on her face, completely oblivious to our presence. I instinctively wanted to avoid their gaze, but I felt Ethan's hand tighten around mine. The warmth from his palm gave me strength, and I slowly calmed down. He leaned in and whispered in my ear, "Pay them no mind. Let's just eat." His voice was gentle but firm, like a sedative that soothed my panicked heart. I took a deep breath, forced a smile, and continued eating my steamed bun. But the food had lost its taste. My attention was completely captivated by the other two. They found a table not far from us, and Melody chattered away about something. Julian, however, looked distracted, his gaze frequently drifting in our direction. I felt like I was sitting on pins and needles, completely uncomfortable. A waiter from the restaurant approached their table with a smile. "What can I get for you two today?" Before the waiter could finish, Melody's sharp voice cut through the air. "What's wrong with this place? How can you let just anyone in? Aren't you afraid of lowering your standards?" I snapped my head up and saw Melody pointing at us, her face a mask of disgust and resentment. Ethan's expression instantly darkened. His grip on my hand tightened, and I could see the veins on the back of his hand bulge. I gently squeezed his hand back, giving him a calming look. He didn't need to step in. I could handle this myself. Melody wanted a fight? Bring it on. I saw Julian quickly pull Melody back, but his face was ashen, as if he might faint at any moment. In his weakened state, Julian probably didn't even have the strength to argue. I felt a secret satisfaction but kept my expression neutral. I wondered what Julian thought when he saw my face. His eyes were a complex mix of regret, pain, bitterness, and even a hint of pleading. He had once been so proud, but now he looked as pathetic as a drowned rat. I felt nothing. I simply looked away, refusing to meet his gaze. He had brought this on himself. Why should I feel any pity? Ignoring them, I picked up my chopsticks to continue eating, but a shrill voice interrupted me again. "Well, if it isn't a leaner Vance. What, you think you're better than everyone else now that you've latched onto the Sterling family?" Melody tore her arm from Julian's grasp, strutted over to our table on her stilettos, her bright red nails nearly poking my nose. Even worn-out goods that Julian didn't want can find a new owner. I looked up slightly, a cold smile on my lips. Some people, when their own lives are miserable, just can't stand to see others happy. My choices are none of your business. But you, clinging to Julian like he's your last hope, are you afraid he'll run away or that no one else will want you? Julian's face grew even paler. He tugged on Melody's sleeve and said in a low, pleading voice, "Melody, stop it. Let's go." Melody shoved his hand away and shrieked, "Go where?" She pointed at me, her eyes practically shooting flames. "Don't you get too smug, Alina Vance. Do you really think Ethan Sterling loves you? He's just playing with you once he's tired of you, you'll be." Chapter 17, before she could finish, Ethan cut her off. He slowly stood up, his tall frame giving me an immense sense of security. He looked down at Melody, his tone indifferent but carrying an undeniable authority. "Miss Albright, you can eat what you want, but you can't say what you want. Please show some respect." He paused, his gaze sweeping over the pale-faced Julian, his voice growing even colder. "As for Mr. Croft, I think you know better than anyone who betrayed the relationship first. Alina did nothing wrong to you. You did wrong by her." Julian's lips moved, as if he wanted to say something, but ultimately nothing came out. Melody was also intimidated by Ethan's presence. She opened her mouth but seemed to be choked, unable to make a sound. I felt a surge of satisfaction. Seeing them so miserable, it felt like all the wrongs I had suffered had finally been righted. Ethan turned to me, his eyes gentle. "Don't mind them, let's eat." The restaurant owner, seeing the commotion, walked over with a laugh and clapped Ethan on the shoulder. "Young Mr. Sterling, long time no see, what's this, someone causing trouble?" He gave Julian and Melody a meaningful look. "The Good Fortune Pavilion is not a place where just anyone can act up." He turned to a waiter and ordered, "Please escort these two esteemed guests out. They are no longer welcome here." Ethan sat back down, his large, well-defined hand gently stroking my hair as if to soothe a frightened kitten. I leaned against his shoulder, feeling the warmth and strength emanating from him. His presence surrounded me, dispelling the gloom Melody had brought, making me feel incredibly safe and secure. In that moment, I was more certain than ever that I had made the right choice. Julian stood nearby, his face pale, his eyes empty. He watched Ethan and me, looking so intimate, and his already thin frame seemed even more fragile, as if a gust of wind could knock him over. A complex mix of jealousy, regret, and profound helplessness flickered in his eyes. He knew he had lost me completely, and it was all his own doing. Before the owner could finish, Melody suddenly shrieked, "What do you mean? Are you taking their side? You!" She pointed at me, screaming hysterically, "Alina Vance, you wench you!" Melody Albright, a deep voice suddenly cut in, filled with uncontrollable anger. I turned to see Julian grabbing Melody's arm. His face was pale, his forehead covered in a fine sheen of sweat, and his lips trembled slightly, as if he were struggling to contain himself. He gripped her arm so tightly his knuckles turned white. But Melody, as if she hadn't heard him, snatched a teacup from the table, her sharp nails scraping against the white porcelain with a grating sound. I could feel her intense, hateful gaze burning my skin. For a second, I thought that cup of scalding tea was going to be thrown in my face. I instinctively closed my eyes, but the expected pain never came. Instead, I heard a dull thud, followed by Melody's scream and the sound of the surrounding crowd gasping. I opened my eyes to see Ethan standing in front of me, his broad back completely shielding me from view. He didn't even flinch, just casually brushed off his jacket, as if what had landed on him wasn't scalding tea, but a fallen leaf. "Ethan, Chapter 18, I cried out, instinctively wanting to check if he was hurt. Melody's screaming continued, sharp and piercing like a cat whose tail had been stepped on. She pointed at Ethan, her voice trembling. You dare." Ethan turned around, looking down at her with icy eyes. "Miss Albright, I think you need to calm down." His voice was calm, but it carried an authority that could not be questioned. Melody was stunned. Her face turned shades of red and white, her eyes darting around, and finally she lowered her head in defeat. The other customers began to whisper, pointing at Melody. She looked like a buffoon, utterly humiliated under the gaze of the crowd. A sense of satisfaction washed over me. That woman deserved it. The restaurant owner said sternly, "Miss Albright, please leave my restaurant." Melody's head snapped up, as if she wanted to say something, but she deflated like a popped balloon. In the end, she said nothing, just shot me a venomous glare and ran out of the good fortune pavilion. Julian gave me one last, complicated look before chasing after Melody. "Let's go too." Ethan took my hand, his voice gentle. I nodded and followed him out of the restaurant. Standing in the sunlight, I took a deep breath. The heavy stone that had been pressing on my chest finally felt like it had been lifted. "Ellie!" Ethan suddenly stopped and turned to look at me. His eyes were filled with pain and self-blame. "I'm sorry you had to go through that." I quickly shook my head and cupped his face to examine it. "Are you okay? Did it burn you?" The area where the tea had hit him was already turning red, and my heart ached for him. He took my hand and brought it to his lips for a gentle kiss. "Silly girl, I'm fine. It's just a minor burn. It's nothing compared to what you've had to endure." The tenderness in his eyes was enough to melt me. I stood on my tiptoes and kissed him. People were coming and going around us, but I didn't care. I just wanted to savor this moment of sweetness and security. In the distance, Julian was still sitting on a bench near the restaurant, motionless as a statue. Melody's insane behavior was the last straw, completely shattering any remaining illusions he had about their marriage. His world seemed to have crumbled in that instant. He stared blankly ahead, his eyes empty, as if he had lost his soul. He felt that life was meaningless. One wrong step had led to another, and he was tired. Back home, Ethan's arm was around my waist as we snuggled on the sofa, chatting idly. The afternoon sun streamed through the French windows, casting dappled light on the floor. Everything was so peaceful and serene, as if the unpleasantness at the restaurant had been just a dream. I sighed softly and rested my head on his shoulder, feeling the warmth and security of his presence. Suddenly, the harsh ringing of the doorbell shattered the tranquility. The housekeeper went to answer it, and I heard a rather serious voice say, "Is Miss Vance home?" "I'm Mr. Finch, the Croft family's lawyer." The Crofts? Julian? My heart sank, and a bad feeling washed over me. Chapter 19, I instinctively looked at Ethan, and a flicker of confusion crossed his eyes as well. Mr. Finch walked in, dressed in a crisp suit and carrying a briefcase, his expression serious and grave. "Miss Vance, I apologize for disturbing you and Mr. Sterling." He gave a slight nod, his tone apologetic. "Mr. Finch, what is it?" I tried to keep my voice calm, but it trembled slightly. "Mr." Finch hesitated for a moment before speaking. "Miss Vance, Mr. Croft's condition is not good. He keeps repeating your name and hopes you can come with me to the hospital to see him." My breath caught in my throat. The image of Julian's desperate eyes at the restaurant flashed through my mind. He looked lost, helpless, like a child who had lost his way. I had once loved him so much. Seeing him like this now, my heart felt a sharp prick of pain. What happened to him?" I asked softly, forcing back my unease. Mr. Finch sighed. "Mr. Croft's mental state has been very poor since the incident with Miss Albright, and what happened at the restaurant today was a huge blow to him. The doctor says he might be suicidal." "Suicidal?" I gasped, looking at Mr. Finch in disbelief. Julian, the once proud and confident man, was thinking of taking his own life. I turned to look at Ethan, whose expression had also become grim. I felt his hand gently tighten around mine, a warmth spreading from his palm to my heart. My mind was a battlefield of conflicting emotions. On one side was my former love, now on the brink of life and death. On the other was my current husband, who gave me warmth and support. What should I do? I opened my mouth but didn't know what to say. Mr. Finch looked at me, his eyes pleading. "Miss Vance, I know this is a difficult request, but Julian really needs you." I took a deep breath and slowly stood up. "Let's go." Ethan stood up as well, holding my hand tightly. "Ellie," I looked at Ethan. His expression was complex, a mixture of concern and a barely concealed pain. He squeezed my hand back, his palm warm and dry. "Ellie, I respect your decision. Whatever you do, I will support you." His voice was low and steady, but it couldn't hide the unease in his eyes. In that moment, I knew with absolute clarity that this man truly cared for me. Julian's despair, Mr. Finch's plea, Ethan's quiet suffering, it all weighed on my chest like a giant boulder, making it hard to breathe. I closed my eyes, took a deep breath, and when I opened them again, my gaze was calm. "Mr. Finch, I'm sorry." My voice was firm. "My life is very happy now, and I don't want to be disturbed by the past anymore. Please tell Mr. Croft that I hope he recovers soon and starts a new life." As for me, I have already started my new life, and there's no going back. A flash of disappointment crossed Mr. Finch's face. He opened his mouth as if to say more. But in the end, he said nothing, just sighed deeply, picked up his briefcase, and turned to leave. Watching him go, I felt a sense of relief. I turned to look at Ethan. He was watching me with a gentle expression, his eyes filled with love and understanding. I walked over and hugged him tightly, burying my head in his chest, soaking in the warmth and security he provided. Night fell, but I lay in bed, unable to sleep. The day's events replayed in my mind like a movie. Julian's desperate eyes, Mr. Finch's pleading tone, and Ethan's hidden worry. These images intertwined, tangling my thoughts. After what felt like an eternity, I finally drifted into a restless sleep. In my dream, I was back in the time I was with Julian. We went to the movies together, walked along the beach, and dreamed of a beautiful future. But then the scene shifted. I saw Julian standing alone in an empty room, his eyes vacant, his face expressionless. He reached out, trying to grasp something, but his hands closed on empty air. He slowly sank to the floor, burying his head in his knees, like a lost child, helpless and full of despair. Chapter 20, I woke with a start, drenched in a cold sweat. The scene in my dream had been so real it left my heart pounding. I turned to look at the peacefully sleeping Ethan beside me, his breathing even and deep. I sighed softly, got out of bed, and walked to the window, staring out at the dark night sky. "Julian," I whispered his name, an inexplicable sense of unease washing over me. A few days later, my phone rang early in the morning. It was Chloe. "Ellie, are you free today? We haven't seen each other in ages. Let's get coffee." I hesitated for a moment. "Okay, where?" Chloe chose our usual coffee shop. We sat by the large window, the sunlight streaming in, warm and pleasant. But I felt cold all over. "Ellie, you don't look well. What's wrong?" Chloe asked with concern. I forced a smile and shook my head. "Nothing, just didn't sleep well." The coffee arrived. I stirred it mechanically but couldn't bring myself to take a sip. "Actually, I wanted to tell you something about Julian," Chloe said hesitantly, her expression grave. My heart sank and a bad feeling crept over me. "What? What's wrong with him?" I tried to keep my voice steady, but it trembled slightly. Chloe sighed. "The doctor said he might not live much longer." My hand, holding the coffee cup, shook. Hot liquid splashed onto the back of my hand, the burn nothing compared to the searing turmoil in my heart. How could that be? I murmured to myself, Julian's pale face flashing in my mind. Chloe continued, "The doctor said Julian has very little will to live. It seems he's given up on treatment." She paused, glanced at me cautiously, and added, "I heard from a friend that Julian is filled with regret. He regrets leaving you." Regret. The word exploded in my heart like a bomb. I thought I had moved on, but now, the memories I had deliberately buried came flooding back, threatening to drown me. Images of going to the movies with Julian, walking on the beach, dreaming of the future, they all flashed through my mind. The sweet moments, the painful ones, all intertwined like a sharp knife, cutting into my heart again and again. For the rest of our meeting, I was quiet. I barely heard anything else Chloe said. My thoughts were consumed by Julian, by our past. When I got home, I was distracted while making dinner and nearly cut my hand. Ethan came out of his study and saw my absent-minded state. He asked with concern, "Ellie, what's wrong? You don't seem happy." I forced a smile. "It's nothing, just a little tired." "Are you sure?" Ethan came over and gently took my hand. His hand was warm and strong, but I felt my own heart growing colder. I took a deep breath and summoned my courage. "Ethan, I saw Chloe today. She told me about Julian. He's not going to make it." Ethan's hand visibly tensed. He was silent for a moment, then he gently pulled me into his arms. "Ellie, I know this is hard for you. If you need to cry, just let it out." In his warm embrace, I could no longer hold back my grief, and the tears finally came. I haltingly told him everything Chloe had said, and all the conflict and turmoil I was feeling inside. I had expected him to be angry, to question why I still cared about Julian, but he wasn't. He just listened quietly, letting my tears soak his shirt. When I had cried myself out, he gently stroked my hair and said softly, "Ellie, I know you have a good heart and you can't just let it go. I understand. If you want to see him, I'll go with you." His words were like a warm current, instantly flooding my entire body. I looked up at him in disbelief. "Ethan, you're "You're not angry?" Ethan smiled, his eyes full of tenderness and trust. "Why would I be angry? I trust you, Ellie. I know your heart belongs to me. You just can't bear to see him like this." His generosity and understanding made me feel even more guilty, and I loved him even more for it. I hugged him tightly and nodded against his chest. The next day, we went to the hospital together. On the way to Julian's room, my heart was filled with apprehension and anxiety. I was afraid to see him, yet I couldn't help but want to know how he was doing. As we reached the door to his room, we heard a heated argument from inside. Chapter 21, I stopped, hesitating whether to go in. "Why would you do that? You know perfectly well." A woman's voice, sharp and piercing. "What did I do?" "I didn't do anything, you." It was Julian's weak voice, laced with a hint of anger. "Don't pretend you think I don't know. You." I was about to push the door open, but Ethan took my hand and gently shook his head. "Let's wait." The argument inside grew louder. I was filled with confusion and unease, wondering what was happening. Suddenly, the shouting stopped, replaced by the sharp sound of something shattering. My heart clenched. I couldn't wait any longer and threw open the door. The acrid smell of disinfectant, mixed with an unidentifiable perfume, made me wrinkle my nose. Melody Albright stood with her back to me, her slender frame looking somewhat crazed. She was clutching something tightly in her trembling hands, as if on the verge of a breakdown. And Julian, pale-faced, was half lying on the hospital bed, a stark red stain spreading across the front of his patient gown. "Why would you do this? You know I can't handle any stress right now." Melody whirled around, screaming hysterically at Julian. She was clutching a photo of me, crumpled and wrinkled. She froze when she saw me, a venomous look flashing in her eyes. Then she turned back to Julian. "You still have her picture, you're still thinking about her?" Julian coughed weakly, a trickle of blood seeping from the corner of his mouth. He tried to lift his hand to wipe it away, but let it fall back, strength failing him. "Melody, calm down." Seeing him in this state, I felt an unexpected pang of pity. The once dashing Julian Croft was now so broken and pathetic, but that pity was quickly suppressed by reason. This wasn't love anymore, just a dream from my foolish youth. Now that I was awake, it was time for it all to end. "Ellie!" Julian saw me, and a complex emotion flickered in his eyes. He tried to say something, but was racked by another violent coughing fit. More blood spilled from his lips, staining the white sheets a shocking, bright red. Seeing this, Melody became even more frantic. "See, look, it's all because of you, all because of you." She tore the photo in her hands to shreds, the pieces fluttering down like a tragic snowfall. I stood in the doorway, watching the scene unfold, finding it all absurd and laughable. I took a deep breath and secretly clenched my fists. Ethan gently patted my shoulder, and a warmth instantly spread through me. I gave him a reassuring look and then walked to Julian's bedside. His face was ashen, his eyes empty, like a hollow shell that had lost its soul. I took a deep breath and said calmly, "Julian, let the past be the past. Focus on getting better. I hope you can live a good life." My tone was neutral, without resentment or pity, just stating a fact. The love and hate of the past had all dissipated. I had let go. My calmness seemed to enrage Melody. She shrieked and tried to lunge at me but was stopped by a nurse. "Ma'am, please calm down. The patient needs rest. If you continue to cause a disturbance, I'll have to call security." The nurse's tone was firm and unwavering. Melody shot me a hateful glare but finally, reluctantly, shut her mouth. I looked at her without a flicker of emotion. I once saw her as a rival. Now, in my eyes, she was just an insignificant stranger. I was finally free of it all, and the feeling was one of immense relief. After leaving the hospital room, Ethan and I walked hand in hand under the sun. The autumn sunlight was warm on our skin, chasing away the hospital's gloom. I felt the gentle movement of the new life inside me, and a happy smile unconsciously graced my lips. He kicked me. I gently stroked my swollen belly, my voice filled with a mother's tenderness. Ethan looked down at my stomach, his eyes so gentle they could have been liquid. "Looks like our baby is very active." He gently took my hand, lacing his fingers with mine, as if trying to transfer all his love to me. We looked at each other and smiled, our eyes full of hope for the future. The months of pregnancy were physically tiring, but Ethan took wonderful care of me. 9 months flew by. One day, a tearing pain ripped through me, jolting me from my sleep. Chapter 22, my due date had arrived. I gripped Ethan's hand tightly, my knuckles turning white. His face was filled with unconcealed worry. "Don't be afraid, I'm here." He repeated it over and over, his voice gentle yet strong, like a lifeline that gave me something to hold onto amidst the contractions. At the hospital, I was quickly wheeled into the delivery room. The initial pain was bearable, but as time went on, it intensified exponentially, as if it would tear me to pieces. I tried my best to follow the doctor's instructions, breathing deeply, pushing. My consciousness began to blur, everything went dark, and only the gut-wrenching pain remained, relentlessly assaulting my senses. "This is not good. The mother is experiencing fetal heart rate deceleration. The situation is critical," the doctor's serious voice cut through the quiet of the delivery room. Outside, Ethan paced back and forth, waiting anxiously. Suddenly, the doctor hurried out, her expression grave. "Mr. Sterling, the baby's condition is not good. We might need to save my wife." Ethan cut her off without a moment's hesitation. "You must save my wife," the doctor pushed up her glasses and said. "Don't worry, Mr. Sterling, we will do our best. If it's convenient for you, please change into scrubs and come into the delivery room. I think your wife really needs you right now." "Yes, no problem," Ethan agreed without a hint of hesitation. Inside the delivery room, I felt like I was floating in a chaotic void. There was a buzzing in my ears, and I couldn't hear anything clearly. All I knew was that I couldn't hold on much longer. In a daze, I thought I was hallucinating. I saw the delivery room door being pushed open. Ethan, dressed in surgical scrubs, rushed in, his face etched with anxiety. He grabbed my hand. It was trembling, but incredibly warm. "Ellie, you have to hold on for me, for our child, you have to hold on." His gaze was like a beam of light that pierced the darkness surrounding me. His trembling voice gave me immense strength. With the last of my energy, I squeezed his hand back. Just then, a nurse exclaimed, "Doctor, look," she pointed to the fetal monitor. The line was still faint, but it was more stable than before. Maybe we can try a side-lying position." The doctor's eyes lit up, and she immediately instructed the nurses to adjust my position. I felt like a marionette, letting them move me as they wished. The pain in my body had gone numb, leaving only a powerful instinct to survive. The minutes ticked by, feeling like an eternity. Finally, a loud, clear cry shattered the silence of the delivery room. My body felt light, and all the pain vanished, replaced by an indescribable sense of relief and joy. I heard Ethan's voice, choked with tears of joy. He trembled as he kissed my forehead, repeating "thank you" over and over. However, the joy was short-lived. The doctor placed the baby in an incubator, her expression grave. "The labor was too long. The baby is a bit weak and needs to be monitored in the incubator for a while." My heart sank, and worry washed over me. Looking at the tiny, fragile life in the incubator, my eyes welled up with tears again. Ethan held my hand tightly, offering silent comfort. Suddenly, his phone rang. He glanced at the caller ID, and his face instantly turned pale. He answered the call, and after listening for just a moment, he shot to his feet, his voice trembling as he said, "What? How could this have happened?" Chapter 23, There's a Crisis at the Company. Ethan's voice was terrifyingly low, his face as white as a sheet. My heart clenched. I hadn't even recovered from the ordeal of childbirth, and now I was hit with this. My baby was still in an incubator, my body was still aching, and now there was a new disaster. I took a deep breath, trying my best to remain calm. "What happened?" "Damien Shaw." It was him. Ethan gritted his teeth, slamming his fist against the wall. "He's spreading rumors online, saying our products have quality issues." He paused. "He's also claiming our company bribed officials and falsified inspection reports." My head was buzzing. No wonder he was so distraught. Damien Shaw was Ethan's biggest competitor. They had been fighting for years. Business is war, and I had always known this day might come, but I never expected it to be so sudden, so blindsiding. After getting settled, I was moved into a hospital room. I couldn't rest. I immediately turned on the television. Almost instantly, a flood of negative news stories filled the screen. Miss Lynn's calls came one after another, her voice frantic. "Mr. Sterling, the stock price has hit its limit down, the media is asking." Before we could even process this, the door to my room was thrown open. A swarm of reporters flooded in, their cameras and microphones aimed at Ethan and me. The flashing lights blinded me. A sharp female voice was particularly piercing. "Mrs. Sterling, what is your comment on your company's product quality issues? It's also alleged that Mr. Sterling was involved in bribery. Is this true?" I instinctively looked at Ethan. He shielded me with his body, his eyes cold as he scanned the crowd. "Please leave. This is a hospital. Do not disturb the patient." "Mr. Sterling, are you avoiding the question?" A reporter pressed on. "If you don't respond, does that mean you're admitting to these allegations?" I gripped Ethan's hand tightly. It was frighteningly cold. I had never seen him so flustered. The man who was always so composed now looked like a cornered animal, pushed to the brink. He took a deep breath, about to speak, but was cut off by another question. A reporter eagerly asked, "Mr. Sterling, Mr. Shaw said in an interview today that your marriage to Miss Vance was nothing more than a sordid transaction. How do you respond to that?" My head snapped up to look at Ethan. His expression was complex, his lips pressed into a thin line, but his grip on my hand tightened. The air in the room grew heavy. The camera flashes continued, desperate to capture my distress. I saw Ethan's Adam's apple bob. A flash of pain crossed his eyes, but it was quickly replaced by resolve. "That's right, a transaction." His voice was calm, but his words landed with a heavy thud. I froze, staring at him in disbelief. Chapter 24, I tugged on his hand, forcing him to turn and face me. I searched his eyes, trying to understand what he meant. He turned to me, his gaze gentle but tinged with apology. He leaned down, held me softly, and whispered in my ear, "Ellie, I'm sorry. Now is not the time to tell you the truth. I will handle everything. Trust me." In that moment, I chose to trust him. I nodded, forcing a smile. "I trust you." Ethan made sure I was settled before leaving the room to face the pack of wolves alone. Watching his strong back disappear, my heart grew even more anxious. For the next few days, it was as if Ethan had vanished. Only Miss Lynn came by occasionally to give me updates. She said the company's situation was dire. The stock price continued to fall, partners were pulling out, and employees were in a state of panic. And the reporters, like sharks that had scented blood, refused to leave us alone. My body gradually recovered, but my mind was never at peace. Every day, I worried about Ethan, about the company, and about our child. I felt trapped in a giant cage with no escape. Finally, on the fourth day, Ethan returned. He looked exhausted, but his eyes were unusually bright. He walked over to me and gently held me. "Ellie, it's okay now, it's all over." I looked up at him, confused. "Damien Shaw's plot has been exposed," he explained. "Miss Lynn and my special assistant found the key evidence. They proved that he was the one who maliciously slandered our company and forged the product quality reports. It turned out that while Ethan was gone, Miss Lynn had been investigating secretly. She found an employee who had been bribed by Damien Shaw and obtained a recording of them fabricating the evidence. Ethan held a press conference, played the recording on the spot, and released all the proof. Damien Shaw's conspiracy was revealed, his reputation was ruined, and the company's stock price began to recover. I finally breathed a sigh of relief, the weight on my heart lifting. Our baby also recovered under the doctor's excellent care. I was discharged, and we went back to our home. I thought it was all over, but I didn't realize it was just the calm before another storm. That night, I was holding our baby by the window, looking out at the city lights. Suddenly, I noticed a dark shadow flash in the building across from us. I squinted, trying to get a better look, but saw nothing. I thought my eyes were playing tricks on me, but the next night, I saw the dark shadow again. A sense of unease grew inside me. I had a feeling that someone was watching us in secret. I told him about the shadow I had seen for the past 2 nights, and he immediately became alert. "It seems we're being watched." He didn't want to put me and our child in danger, so he immediately decided to hire a private investigator. The next day, a man named Dave Bolton showed up at our house. He wore a flat cap and a trench coat, looking quite mysterious. Dave Bolton worked with lightning speed. In less than 2 days, he had news for us. "It's Mr. Shaw working with a mysterious figure, seems to be from overseas with a very complicated background." He lowered his voice and said, "They can't accept their defeat. They want revenge." I gasped. How could foreign powers be involved in this? After seeing Dave Bolton out, we sat on the sofa in silence. Looking at Ethan, a terrible premonition suddenly washed over me. A few days later, while Ethan and I were having dinner, the phone rang with a piercing shrill. "Hello." Ethan's voice was deep and magnetic, but his expression changed drastically a moment later. Chapter 25. After hanging up, Ethan said slowly, "Something's happened to Dave Bolton. He was discovered. We don't know if he's dead or alive." A buzzing sound filled my head as if it was about to explode. An intense wave of fear washed over me. I gripped Ethan's sleeve so tightly my nails nearly dug into his flesh. "What are we going to do?" Ethan gently stroked my hair, his eyes shining with a resolute light. "Don't be afraid. I'll protect you and the baby. This has to be resolved, and quickly." His tone was firm, as if he were giving himself a pep talk as much as he was comforting me. For the next few days, I felt like I was living on a knife's edge, every second filled with anxiety. Ethan became even busier, often not coming home until late at night, his face etched with exhaustion. I forced myself to swallow my fear and tried to maintain a sense of calm at home, not wanting to add to his worries. Finally, on a stormy night, Ethan came home, bringing a chill with him. He pulled me into a tight embrace and said in a hoarse voice, "It's over. It's all over." I hugged him back tightly, tears streaming down my face. I knew he must have gone through unimaginable hardship and danger. I didn't press for details about what happened later. All I knew was that the mysterious figure and Mr. Shaw's group were brought to justice, and Dave Bolton, thankfully, had escaped with his life. Life finally returned to normal. Our child grew day by day, and our little family of 3 lived a happy, warm life. I thought all the shadows had passed and that the future would be nothing but bright. Until one morning, I stared at the pregnancy test in my hand. 2 bright red lines. I was pregnant again. The news was like a small stone dropped into a calm lake, sending ripples through my heart. But Ethan was out of town on a business trip for the next few days, completely swamped with work. Before I had a chance to tell Ethan the good news, I received a call from an unknown number. "Miss Vance, long time no see." The voice on the other end was chilling. "Who is this?" I tried to keep my voice steady. The person on the other end let out a low chuckle, a sound as cold and sharp as a snake's hiss. "Who I am isn't important. What's important is that I know you're pregnant." He paused, his tone dripping with malice. "Eleanor Vance, do you really think you can hold on to Ethan Sterling's heart? You're just a pathetic wretch using a child to trap him." His words made no sense, but they stabbed into my heart like a sharp knife. "You're lying," I shouted, cutting him off. Another cold laugh came from the other end of the line, and then he hung up. I collapsed onto the sofa, my mind a chaotic mess. Who was he? How did he know I was pregnant? What did he want? Or what did he want to do to Ethan? Chapter 26. That call felt like a dark omen, filling me with a strange sense of dread. To make matters worse, someone leaked the news of my pregnancy online. Some said I used the baby to force Ethan into marriage. Others claimed the child wasn't his, that it was a bastard. Some even said I was keeping a pretty boy on the side. All sorts of nasty rumors began to circulate on social media. The words wrapped around me like venomous snakes, making it hard to breathe. I locked myself in my room, refusing to see anyone. I didn't dare tell Ethan. I was afraid of worrying him, and even more afraid that the rumors would make him doubt me. Ethan quickly noticed something was wrong. That night, he came home and found me sitting alone in the dark living room, my eyes vacant. He didn't say a word, just quietly walked over and held me tight. His embrace was warm and strong, like a solid fortress protecting me. "What's wrong, Ellie?" he asked softly, his voice full of concern. Resting in his arms, I finally broke down and cried. I told him everything about the phone call and the vicious rumors. He listened without a word, only holding me tighter. After a long while, he whispered in my ear, "Don't be afraid. It's all nonsense. I love you and I trust you." His words were like a warm current flowing into my heart, dispelling the gloom. I looked up at his determined eyes and a sense of calm slowly settled over me. "Ethan," I was so choked up I couldn't speak. "SHH," he gently pressed a finger to my lips. I know everything. I'll handle this." His tone was firm and powerful, making me feel incredibly safe. The next morning, when I woke up, Ethan was already gone. A note was left on the table. "Went to the office to take care of a few things. I'll be back tonight. Don't worry, everything will be okay." I looked at the note, but my heart was still filled with unease. Late that night, Ethan finally returned, his expression terrifyingly grim. "Ethan, what happened?" I asked cautiously. He took a deep breath and said in a low voice, "I've found the person who spread the rumors." It turned out to be the remnants of one of Ethan's former business rivals, stirring up trouble from behind the scenes. They held a grudge and wanted to use this method to get back at Ethan, while also trying to drive a wedge between us and make me leave him. I listened to Ethan's explanation, but I couldn't shake the feeling of unease. These people were cunning and treacherous. Who knew what new tricks they would come up with to use against us? I told Ethan my worries. He gently stroked my hair and comforted me. "Don't worry, I'll protect you. I won't let them hurt you again." To completely free me from the trouble of these rumors, Ethan decided to have the legal department issue a statement and then take me on vacation. He said, "Let's go somewhere no one knows us, get away from all this drama, and just relax." I readily agreed, my heart filled with anticipation. We packed our bags and boarded a flight to a coastal city. Azure seas, blue skies, coconut trees, and sandy beaches, I could almost smell the sea breeze and feel the warmth of the sun already. After arriving at the hotel and settling in, we went for a walk on the beach. The sun was setting, casting a golden glow on the water, making it sparkle beautifully. I took a deep breath, feeling all my worries melt away. "Ethan, thank you." I turned to look at him, my eyes full of gratitude. "Silly girl, what's there to thank me for?" He smiled, wrapping an arm around my shoulder. "As long as you're happy, I'm happy." During our vacation, I deliberately tried not to think about my troubles, wanting only to enjoy this time alone with Ethan. But the rumors were like a shadow I couldn't shake, constantly popping up to disturb my peace of mind. One day, I was walking alone on the beach, feeling a bit down. Suddenly, a familiar figure appeared in my line of sight. Chapter 27, it was Julian Croft's cousin, Diana Croft. She walked straight up to me, a mocking smile on her face. Well, if it isn't Miss Vance. All alone? Where's Mr. Sterling? Don't tell me he ditched you." I suppressed my anger and looked at her coldly. "Is there something you need, Miss Croft?" "Can't I just come over and have a chat?" Diana said sarcastically. "I heard you married Mr. Sterling. I'm so happy for you. But you should know, he only married you for the novelty of it." Just as I was about to retort, I noticed a crowd gathering around us. They were recording with their phones, whispering about Ethan and me. I then realized Diana was doing this on purpose, spreading malicious gossip right here. A surge of anger rose in me, but I quickly calmed down. Instead of arguing with these people, it would be better to let them know the whole story. I walked into the center of the crowd and said loudly, "Everyone, I think there might be some misunderstandings about my husband and me. How about this? I'll buy you all a drink and tell you our story." Hearing this, the people around us gathered closer, intrigued. I told them everything, without reservation, about Ethan and me, from our childhood to the present day. I spoke of our innocent puppy love, the spark when we met again, and all the storms we had weathered together. My story moved everyone there. They applauded our love and condemned Diana for spreading lies. Diana never expected this outcome. Her face turned pale, and she scurried away in humiliation. Watching her flee, I felt a sense of immense satisfaction. Just then, a familiar voice came from behind me. "Ellie!" I turned around to see Ethan standing behind the crowd, a gentle smile on his face. He strode toward me and gently pulled me into his arms. "Sweetheart, you were amazing," he whispered in my ear, his voice full of love and pride. In that moment, I felt like a princess in a fairy tale. The people around us offered their blessings, their eyes filled with admiration and envy. I looked at Ethan, my heart overflowing with happiness and gratitude. We walked hand in hand along the beach, enjoying the rare peace and sweetness. The sun shone down on us, warm and comforting, just like our mood. The sea breeze blew gently, bringing fresh air and sweeping away all the previous gloom. After our vacation, we came home. To my surprise, the attitude of our neighbors and friends had completely changed. The whispers and strange looks were gone, replaced by sincere blessings and friendly smiles. "Miss Vance, congratulations, you and Mr. Sterling are a perfect match." "Yes, your story is so moving, we wish you a lifetime of happiness." Hearing these words of blessing warmed my heart. I knew we had finally overcome this hurdle and won everyone's acceptance and good wishes. As the days passed, my belly gradually grew. The little life inside me was growing healthily, bringing me endless joy and anticipation. Ethan doted on me even more, making me different delicious meals every day, taking me for walks, and telling me stories. We were immersed in happiness, cherishing this hard-won peaceful life. I thought our lives would continue to be this happy forever. However, it seems fate always enjoys playing tricks on us. On a seemingly ordinary afternoon, while tidying up Ethan's study, I accidentally found a document. Its contents left me utterly shocked. Chapter 28. It was a risk assessment report for one of Ethan's company's new projects. The report pointed out that the project had enormous potential risks that, if not handled properly, could deal a devastating blow to the company. My heart sank. Were we about to face another challenge? I clutched the document tightly, my heart filled with unease and worry. Taking a deep breath, I took the risk assessment report to find Ethan. He was in the living room organizing some files. When he saw me, a gentle smile immediately appeared on his face. "What is it, sweetheart? Is something wrong?" I handed him the report and said in as calm a voice as I could manage, "I found this by accident." He took the file, and the smile on his face gradually faded, replaced by a grave expression. He let out a long sigh, placed the file on the table, and pulled me into his arms. "Don't worry, I'll handle it." Although his tone was calm, I could feel the turmoil within him. I looked up at him and said firmly, "Ethan, this isn't just your problem, it's mine too. Let's face it together, okay?" He looked into my determined eyes and gave a wry smile. He held my hand tightly and said, "It's so good to have you by my side." The trust and reliance in his eyes made me feel filled with strength. The risk points mentioned in this report are critical, but the information is incomplete. I pointed to a few marked sections in the report. "We need more detailed data to make an accurate judgment." Ethan nodded and immediately arranged for someone to gather the relevant information. For the next few days, we spent almost all our time in the study, analyzing data and simulating various possibilities. As the investigation deepened, we discovered that the matter was far more complex than we had imagined. The risks mentioned in the report were just the tip of the iceberg. A much larger crisis seemed to be lurking beneath the surface. A sense of unease began to spread through me. My intuition told me that this was no ordinary matter. "Ethan," I pointed to a name in the report. "I think this person is crucial. We need to talk to him." Ethan followed my finger, and his expression changed slightly. He picked up his phone and dialed. "Miss Lynn, I need you to look into." Ethan calmly gave instructions over the phone, pointing out key details for Miss Lynn to investigate thoroughly. Half a day later, Miss Lynn came to the study. She looked a bit pale, perhaps from overwork. Ethan asked in a low voice, "Miss Lynn, what did you find?" Miss Lynn took a deep breath, as if she had made a momentous decision, and pulled a folder out of her bag. "Mr. Sterling, Miss Vance, I've actually been investigating this matter privately as well. Based on your instructions today, I've compiled some information." The folder was filled with various documents and photos detailing things we hadn't noticed before. I quickly scanned through them, a flicker of surprise in my heart. This information perfectly supplemented the gaps in the risk assessment report, giving us a clearer picture of the overall crisis. Miss Lynn's diligence and caution proved to be crucial at this critical moment. I gave her a grateful look, and she returned it with a faint smile. "It seems we're one step closer to success." There was a hint of relief in Ethan's voice, but his brow remained furrowed. As the investigation continued, one name kept coming up: Victor Thorne. He was our company's biggest competitor in the industry, a treacherous and cunning man who had always seen Ethan as a thorn in his side. "Victor Thorne?" I muttered to myself, a dark premonition creeping into my heart. Chapter 29, that name felt like a heavy stone weighing down on my chest. "Looks like this is going to be a tough fight." A cold glint flashed in Ethan's eyes, his tone firm and icy. We knew Victor Thorne wouldn't be easy to deal with. He had been plotting in the shadows for a long time, aiming to completely crush Ethan's company. This was a battle with the odds stacked against us. One wrong move, and we could lose everything. One day, as we were about to discuss our next move, Ethan's phone rang. He answered, and his face instantly changed. "What did you say?" "I understand." He hung up, shot up from his seat, his face ashen. "Victor Thorne has made a move against our Stardust project." My heart tightened. The Stardust project was our company's most important strategic initiative this year. If it failed, the consequences would be unimaginable. Ethan grabbed his jacket and strode toward the door, his voice low and urgent as he called Miss Lynn, "Notify all senior management immediately." Emergency meeting, the door slammed shut behind him, leaving a tense atmosphere hanging in the air. I took a deep breath, trying to force myself to stay calm. We had poured so much of our heart and soul into the Stardust project. We couldn't let Victor Thorne succeed. The atmosphere in the conference room was as heavy and oppressive as the air before a downpour. Anxiety was written on the faces of every department head. Even the usually composed marketing director couldn't stop tapping his fingers on the table. Ethan sat at the head of the table, his face grim, but the determination in his eyes was like a calming pill that gradually steadied my own frantic heart. Everyone is aware of the situation with the Stardust project. Ethan's voice was low and powerful. Victor Thorne came prepared this time. We must brace for the worst. Someone suggested negotiating directly with Victor Thorne to seek a peaceful resolution. Another advocated for immediately activating the backup plan to minimize losses. For a moment, the room was filled with differing opinions, but no one could find a breakthrough. I looked at Ethan. His brow was furrowed, and he remained silent, seemingly deep in thought. After a moment, he slowly looked up, his gaze sweeping over everyone. "Negotiate," he said in a deep voice. "Negotiating now will only make Victor Thorne more brazen. We have to find his weakness and go on the offensive, but we know nothing about his plan right now," the technical director said with a hint of helplessness. Just then, Miss Lynn, who had been silent the whole time, suddenly spoke up. "Mr. Sterling, I found something." She handed a document to Ethan. "There's an additional clause in the project contract regarding environmental standards. Victor Thorne might have overlooked it." Ethan took the document and quickly scanned it, a glint of light in his eyes. "This clause," he murmured to himself, a faint smile playing on his lips. "Interesting." Ethan closed the file and looked at Mr. Warren, who was standing nearby. "Mr. Warren, a word." He lowered his voice and spoke quietly with Mr. Warren. I saw a flicker of surprise on Mr. Warren's face, which slowly turned to affirmation, and finally, he gave a solemn nod. Brilliant Victor Thorne thought he'd found a loophole in the contract, but he never expected to fall into a trap of his own making. After the meeting, Mr. Warren quickly drafted a legal statement and contacted several authoritative media outlets to publicize Victor Thorne's violations. The news sent shockwaves through the industry. He called us furious, his voice full of threats and intimidation, but we already held the legal and moral high ground. His blustering was powerless. Imagining him fuming, I couldn't help but want to laugh out loud. It was incredibly satisfying. I thought that would be the end of it, but I never expected Victor Thorne to be such a tough nut to crack. When a direct attack failed, he resorted to dirty tricks. He spread rumors online, accusing our company of tax evasion in an attempt to ruin our relationships with our partners. For a time, panic spread both inside and outside the company, and several important collaborations stalled as a result. Faced with this sudden crisis, Ethan remained unusually calm. "Leonard Hamilton?" Chapter 30, he stared out the window, frowning, and muttered the name to himself, trying to find a way out of the predicament. I'd heard Ethan mention this name before. He was supposedly eccentric and unpredictable. Persuading him to cooperate was said to be next to impossible. But Leonard Hamilton is a very difficult man to work with. I wrapped my arms around his waist, looking at him with some concern. "I know it's difficult," Ethan said, a flicker of resolve in his eyes, "but we don't have any better options." He picked up his phone and dialed a number. I held my breath, watching the tense line of his jaw. The air was thick with tension. The call connected. Ethan took a deep breath and began slowly. "Mr. Hamilton, hello, this is Ethan Sterling." His voice was deep and steady, but it couldn't hide a faint, almost imperceptible tremor. I squeezed his hand tightly. My own palms were slick with sweat. He glanced at me, his eyes filled with determination and encouragement. It was as if he was telling me that even if the path ahead was fraught with thorns, he would cut through them all to forge a path to the light for us. Ethan's voice was low and powerful as he explained, word by word, the company's current situation and how Victor Thorne had meticulously laid a trap to drive us into a corner. My heart sank lower and lower with his every word. On the other end of the line, Leonard Hamilton's voice betrayed no emotion. He would occasionally let out a simple hum to show he was listening. His indifferent attitude made me even more anxious. It felt like being in an ice cellar, the cold seeping into my bones. The seconds ticked by, each one feeling like an eternity. I felt my breathing become difficult, my palms drenched in cold sweat. Tiny beads of sweat had formed on Ethan's forehead, but he remained calm, carefully controlling his tone to keep any hint of panic from his voice. "Mr. Hamilton, I know this is a sudden request, but we've truly run out of options." There was a hint of pleading in Ethan's voice. "I believe that if you're willing to help, we can overcome this crisis. Our company will, of course, compensate you accordingly afterward." The line went silent for a moment. Just as I was about to lose hope, Leonard Hamilton finally spoke. "Be in my office tomorrow at 10 a.m. His tone was still cold, but his words were like a lifeline, reigniting my hope. I squeezed Ethan's hand, too emotional to speak. He squeezed back, giving me a reassuring look. After hanging up, Ethan let out a long breath, seeming to deflate completely. He leaned back on the sofa, closed his eyes, his brow deeply furrowed. I knew that beneath his calm exterior, his mind was in turmoil. "Ethan," I said his name softly, wanting to comfort him but not knowing what to say. He opened his eyes and looked at me, a tired smile touching his lips. "It's okay. Everything will be all right." I nodded and nestled into his arms, feeling the warmth of his embrace. Though the road ahead was still uncertain, as long as he was with me, I was fearless. The next morning, we arrived at Leonard Hamilton's office early. His assistant showed us into a spacious, bright conference room and asked us to wait. The minutes ticked by, and my nervousness grew. Just then, the door opened. Leonard Hamilton walked in. He scanned us, his gaze as sharp as a knife, as if it could see through anything. He spoke slowly. "Tell me about your plan." Ethan calmly began to lay out our plan, but Mr. Hamilton's expression remained unreadable, impossible to decipher. Just as I was about to lose all hope, an idea flashed through my mind. Chapter 30, I remembered helping an elderly woman at a charity gala a few months ago. She had been incredibly grateful and told me her son worked for Leonard Hamilton's company and would surely repay my kindness. I quickly interrupted Ethan and told Mr. Hamilton the story. He frowned slightly, as if trying to recall something. My heart pounded like a drum against my ribs. A few seconds later, a gleam appeared in his eyes. "Was that old woman a Mrs. Miller?" I nodded eagerly, clinging to this last hope. "Yes, it was her. I think her son's name is Kevin Miller." Mr. Hamilton's demeanor changed noticeably. His tone softened. "Kevin Miller is one of my best men. He did mention you. It seems there's some fate between us after all." Ethan gave me a grateful look. He hugged me tightly and whispered in my ear, "Ellie, you're truly my guiding star." I leaned into his warm embrace, my heart filled with sweetness and hope. However, Leonard Hamilton didn't agree to help us right away. He said he needed to think it over and told us to go home and wait for his call. It was like having a bucket of cold water thrown over us. Hope was once again followed by an endless wait. Leaving Mr. Hamilton's office, my feelings were a mix of joy and anxiety. Back at home, Ethan's phone suddenly rang. It was Victor Thorne. His tone was arrogant and provocative. "Ethan Sterling, you think you found a savior. Leonard Hamilton won't help you. Just wait for bankruptcy," Ethan replied coldly. "We'll see about that." After hanging up, his face was grim, a fierce light in his eyes. The next few days were agonizing for both of us as we waited for Leonard Hamilton's final decision. Ethan paced back and forth in his office, restless and anxious. I couldn't sit still either, my heart in my throat. Just as we were about to give up hope, the call from Leonard Hamilton finally came. He got straight to the point. "Mr. Sterling, I've decided to help you." The news was like a godsend. I was so thrilled I didn't know what to do. I had expected him to lay out all sorts of harsh conditions, even bracing myself for the worst, but I never imagined he would agree so readily. "Really, Mr. Hamilton, are you really willing to help us?" There was a hint of disbelief in Ethan's voice. "Of course." Leonard Hamilton's voice was steady and powerful, giving us immense confidence. After hanging up, Ethan and I looked at each other and smiled. The weight on our chests finally lifted. Ethan grabbed his jacket, his eyes shining. "Let's go. We're going to pay Victor Thorne a visit." Leonard Hamilton's support was like a powerful tailwind. instantly blowing away the dark clouds that had been hanging over us. It was like a sharp sword that helped us cut through all obstacles, making us unstoppable. We not only recovered our previous losses, but also completely exposed Victor Thorne's schemes, leaving him utterly disgraced. I'll never forget the sight of Victor Thorne's face, twisted with rage after his defeat. He was like a caged beast, struggling desperately but to no avail. Watching his plan crumble step by step filled my heart with the sweet taste of revenge. "Ellie, we won." Ethan pulled me into an excited embrace, his heartbeat so strong I could feel the joy surging in his chest. He planted a gentle kiss on my forehead, his deep eyes filled with gratitude and love. "It's all thanks to you. If you hadn't mentioned helping Leonard Hamilton's friend, we might still be stuck in that mess." I nestled into his warm embrace, my heart feeling as sweet as honey. Yes, we had succeeded. Together, we had overcome the difficulties and protected our love and our business. Just as we were basking in the joy of our victory, a shrill ringtone shattered the beautiful atmosphere. It was Ethan's phone, an unknown number. He hesitated for a moment before answering. A sinister voice came from the other end of the line, like a whisper from hell. "Ethan Sterling, don't celebrate too soon. This is just the beginning. The real show is yet to come." Chapter 32. Ethan's face instantly turned ashen. The knuckles of the hand holding the phone went white, and a cold glint flashed in his eyes. He shot to his feet, grabbed his jacket, his voice as cold as ice. "Trace it, find out who owns this number." Now, seeing his grim expression, I worriedly took his hand. "Ethan, be careful. This person sounds dangerous." He squeezed my hand back, his eyes filled with resolve. "Don't be afraid. I won't let him hurt you." Miss Lynn sprang into action, pulling up the call logs and using every channel available to trace the mysterious number's origin. Watching them work, a growing sense of unease crept into my heart. This person hiding in the shadows was like a venomous snake, ready to strike a fatal blow at any moment. Compared to Victor Thorne, this mysterious person was far more elusive. While Victor Thorne's methods were despicable, he at least left a trail. This person, however, was buried so deep that we could find almost no useful clues. The seconds ticked by, and the atmosphere in the office grew heavier. Ethan's expression darkened. He rubbed his temples in frustration, a clear sign the investigation was not going well. Miss Lynn's brow was also furrowed as she typed furiously, hoping to find a single clue in the sea of information. The feeling of helplessness was suffocating. We were like mice trapped in a vast maze, with no exit and no hope in sight. I tried my best to stay calm, comforting a frustrated Ethan and encouraging an exhausted Miss Lynn. "There has to be a way," I said firmly. "We'll find him." But my words felt hollow and weak. Even I was beginning to doubt if we could really defeat this enemy lurking in the shadows. Just as we were about to give up, Miss Lynn suddenly froze. She stared at the computer screen, her eyes wide, as if she had discovered something unbelievable. "Wait," she said, her voice trembling. "This IP address." Miss Lynn shot her head up, pointing to a flashing dot on the screen, her voice shaking. "This IP address. It's right near the company building, miss." Lynn pulled up the security footage from around the building. A shady figure appeared repeatedly, always lurking around the corporate tower. He wore a flat cap and a mask, hiding most of his face, but his furtive demeanor screamed that he was up to no good. "I'll go check it out right now." Miss Lynn grabbed her jacket and started to rush out. Ethan grabbed her arm. "Wait," he said sternly. "It's too dangerous. I'm going with you." Though I was worried, I knew I would only be in the way if I went. I could only squeeze Ethan's hand tightly and tell him to be careful. After they left, I was alone in the office. Anxiety and fear washed over me like a tide, nearly drowning me. The seconds ticked by, each one feeling like an eternity. Finally, the office door pushed open, and Ethan and Miss Lynn walked in with solemn expressions. "What happened?" I asked eagerly. "Miss." Lynn took a deep breath and said slowly, "We followed him and discovered he's connected to a mysterious underground organization." "This organization?" She paused and glanced at Ethan before continuing. "This organization seems to have some connection to one of our company's previous projects." My heart sank, and a chill ran up my spine. Could there be hidden secrets about our past projects that we didn't know? It seems the opponent we're facing this time is much tougher than Victor Thorne. Ethan's voice was icy, laced with a barely concealed anger. Chapter 33. Over the next few days, strange harassment began to occur around the company. People in bizarre outfits would loiter at the company entrance, deliberately causing chaos and disrupting our work. Ethan was fearless, confronting them directly. His sharp gaze and unyielding attitude made the provocateurs hesitate to make any rash moves. In that moment, I saw a kingly aura radiating from him, inspiring awe. However, just when we thought we had the situation under control, even more shocking news arrived. Miss Lin's investigation revealed that there seemed to be an even greater power supporting this mysterious organization from behind the scenes. Who this power was and what their motives were, we had no idea. A greater power, I murmured to myself, a profound sense of helplessness washing over me. Ethan walked to the window, gazing out at the brightly lit city, his eyes deep and grave. Suddenly, he turned around, his eyes fixed on Miss Lin and me. "Get ready," he said seriously. "Tomorrow, we go on the offensive." Ethan's words were decisive, his eyes shining with a resolute light. We couldn't just sit back and wait. That was something Ethan and I both agreed on. He immediately beefed up the company's security, hiring professional security personnel for 24-hour patrols. State-of-the-art surveillance equipment was installed both inside and outside the building, turning it into a veritable fortress. Meanwhile, he and Miss Lin worked overtime, digging into the background of the mysterious organization, trying to unearth the power behind them. I didn't stay idle either. I mobilized all my contacts, hoping to find a breakthrough. However, our actions seemed to have enraged the leader of the organization. Sensing our counterattack, he intensified his attacks on us. First, several of the company's key projects were sabotaged one after another, causing heavy financial losses. Then, they actually started threatening my family. Suspicious individuals began appearing downstairs from my parents' apartment, and my sister was followed on her way to school. To protect my family and me, Ethan had to divert some of his energy to deal with these threats. He was caught in a dilemma, with the company on the brink of collapse on one side and his beloved family on the other. His expression grew darker, and the fatigue in his brow became more pronounced. I knew the immense pressure he was under. I took his hand and gave him a firm look. "Ethan, we can get through this." He squeezed my hand back, a flicker of tenderness in his eyes that was quickly replaced by anxiety. "I will protect you and our family." Just as we were at our wits' end, Miss Lin suddenly brought news. I found out the head of the Shadow Syndicate had contact with a police officer named Wallace. Officer Wallace? Were the police involved? My heart sank. Ethan immediately had Miss Lin contact Officer Wallace, hoping to get some leads from him. The call connected, and Miss Lin put it on speaker. We all held our breath and listened. "Officer Wallace, hello, this is Miss Lin from the Sterling Group." A deep voice came from the other end. "I know what you're investigating, but there are some things you're better off not getting involved in." Ethan snatched the phone, his tone icy. "What do you mean by that?" There was a few seconds of silence, followed by a cold laugh. "Heh, my meaning is clear. Stop digging or else." "Or else what?" Ethan shot back fearlessly. The voice on the other end suddenly turned sinister and terrifying. "Otherwise, you'll live to regret it." Chapter 34. Beep, beep, beep. The line went dead. The office was silent. The three of us stared at each other, a chill running from our feet to the tops of our heads. Ethan's face was ashen. He slammed his fist on the desk, creating a loud bang. "Looks like we've run into a real tough one this time," he said through gritted teeth. Suddenly, there was a knock at the office door. The knock broke the tense silence. Miss Lin got up to open the door, revealing a man with a serious expression. It was Officer Wallace. He walked straight to Ethan and said gravely, "Mr. Sterling, Miss Vance, I'd like to talk to you about the Shadow Syndicate." The news he brought was like a ray of light breaking through the clouds, clearing the gloom that had been hanging over us. It turned out that Officer Wallace had been secretly investigating this organization all along, but lacked concrete evidence. Our counterattacks had inadvertently given him the breakthrough he needed. He had gathered some evidence of the organization's criminal activities and had already begun making arrests. Hearing this, the knot in my stomach finally loosened, and I let out a long sigh of relief. "Officer Wallace, thank you so much," I said emotionally. Officer Wallace smiled faintly. "Don't mention it. It's my duty to protect the city's residents." With the police involved, the Shadow Syndicate's activities were severely restricted. We finally had a moment to breathe and plan our next move. Ethan and Miss Lynn worked overtime, analyzing the organization's movements and objectives, trying to find a link between them and our company's business. After several days of hard work, they finally found the key. It turned out that the Shadow Syndicate's target wasn't the Sterling Group itself, but a new project we were undertaking, the City of the Future. The project involved extensive land development and massive capital investment. If successful, it would bring enormous profits to the Sterling Group, so it was no wonder it had attracted greedy eyes. We acted decisively, immediately adjusting the project plan, cutting off all avenues the organization could exploit, and strengthening security measures. The Shadow Syndicate's plot was completely foiled, and the company gradually returned to normal operations. Just when we thought the dust had settled, Miss Lynn's investigation yielded a new discovery. She discovered that the leader of the Shadow Syndicate had intricate ties to Ethan's family. This news plunged us back into a fog of confusion. Ethan's expression turned incredibly grim. He held my hand tightly, his palm cold. He said in a low voice, "It seems there are some things I must get to the bottom of." Ethan's gaze shifted to the window, his eyes deep and complex. The sudden ring of the phone shattered the silence. Chapter 35. Ethan answered the phone, his face changing drastically. "Grandfather is critically ill?" Ethan's hand gripped mine, his knuckles white, his palm ice cold. We rushed to the old family estate. The car was terrifyingly quiet on the way, the only sound our own ragged breaths. When Arthur Sterling Sr. saw us, a complex light flickered in his cloudy eyes. He raised a trembling hand, motioning for us to sit. The ancient armchair creaked, as if narrating a long-forgotten story. The old patriarch began to speak, his voice hoarse and low, like a rusty knife, slowly cutting open the Sterling family's past glory to reveal the rot within. It turned out that years ago, to establish their foothold in the business world, the Sterling family had ruthlessly suppressed another family, nearly wiping them out. And now, the descendants of that family had returned. They had built a vast, mysterious organization with a single purpose: revenge. My heart pounded in my chest as I listened, a chill running from my feet to the top of my head. His words were like a giant stone pressing on my chest, making it hard to breathe. Ethan's face had also turned incredibly grim. He pursed his lips tightly, saying nothing. What do they want?" I asked, my voice trembling. The old man sighed weakly. "They want everything the Sterlings have. They want the Sterling Group to vanish from this world completely." Ethan shot to his feet, a furious fire burning in his eyes. "Impossible, I will never let them succeed." He resolutely decided to negotiate with the mastermind. Although I knew the trip would be incredibly dangerous, I chose to stay by his side. The negotiation was set at a secluded private club. The atmosphere was suffocatingly tense. The mastermind sat in the shadows, his face obscured. We could only hear his cold voice, like that of a demon from hell. "Ethan Sterling, I gave you a chance. You were the one who didn't cherish it. What do you really want?" Ethan asked, his voice tight with suppressed rage. "It's simple. I want everything the Sterlings have, including your life." The mastermind's voice was filled with mockery and contempt. "I will ruin the Sterling family's reputation. I'll make you taste what it's like to be driven into a corner." Ethan slammed his hand on the table and stood up. "In your dreams, the negotiations broke down. The air was thick with gunpowder." I clutched Ethan's hand, my palms slick with cold sweat. Just then, Miss Lynn burst in. She was holding a file, her face unusually grave. Miss Lynn's face was ashen. She handed a file to Ethan, trembling. "Mr. Sterling, we found evidence of their crimes. Could this be the turning point?" Ethan quickly flipped through the file, a flicker of hope igniting in his eyes. The evidence showed that to achieve its goals, the Shadow Syndicate had engaged in a series of illegal transactions, including money laundering and smuggling. Ethan closed the file, took my hand, and stood up. He looked at the other party, his gaze deadly. "If you refuse to back down, then let's see who comes out on top." With that, he led Miss Lynn and me out of the room without a backward glance. Back at the office, Ethan gave Miss Lynn a decisive order. "Get this evidence to the police immediately." I held his hand tightly, my heart filled with anticipation. If the Shadow Syndicate could be brought to justice, the Sterling family could avert disaster, and we could start a new life. Over the next few days, we closely monitored the police's actions. The syndicate's activities were restricted, and their arrogant demeanor was gradually suppressed. I felt like I could see the dawn breaking, my heart filled with hope and joy. However, the good times didn't last. Chapter 36, the network behind the Shadow Syndicate, was far more complex than we had ever imagined. They quickly evaded the police investigation and began to retaliate wildly. The Sterling family's business partners began pulling their investments one after another. Our capital chain was in serious trouble, and the Sterling Group's stock plummeted uncontrollably. We were once again pushed to the brink, and this time, it was more dangerous than ever before. Ethan rushed around, trying to turn the tide. Watching his increasingly gaunt figure, my heart ached for him. "Ellie, I'm sorry, I've dragged you into this." Ethan's voice was filled with exhaustion and self-blame. I shook my head and held him tightly. "No matter what happens, I'll be by your side." Ethan gently hugged me back. His large hands stroked my back, and his voice was thick with emotion as he said, "Thank you, Ellie." I straightened up, cupped his face gently with my hands, looked him straight in the eye, and said word for word, "I love you. I will always be by your side." I didn't know what our future held, but I knew that I loved him and I would never abandon him.